Welcome in to the PFF College Football Show. Max Chadwick alongside Dalton Wasserman here. We have finally made it to Conference Championship Weekend. It is the final weekend for teams to state their case to the College Football Playoff Selection Committee. And Dalton, another reason why I love doing this show, we get to talk about a lot of teams that we haven't covered at all this year, but have had outstanding years in their conferences and are now playing on Conference Title Weekend. I can't wait to kind of introduce some of these teams to some of our audience right now.
Absolutely. 9 games and 9 trophies to be won, right? Even if you're not going to the playoffs, especially in those Group of 5 conferences, you got to love that they have the ability to win their conference. And we have some really great stories down on that level, too, on top of all of the conference and playoff implications that we're going to get in the Power 4 as well. So it's going to be a lot of fun covering all 9 of these games.
Absolutely. And I will admit right now, there are plenty of teams in this preview that I needed to completely immerse myself into and learn everything I could about these teams for this preview show. And the only way I could do that is with a PFF Plus subscription. Unfortunately, the 40% off sale is no longer going on, but a 30% off sale is going on right now. If you use the promo code HOLIDAY30, you get 30% off PFF Plus right now. The same data, grades, analytics that every single college football team uses at the FBS and most of the FCS level. Every single NFL team uses that same data as well. The player prop tool, which has made a ton of money this year, so you'll make back your whatever money you spend on the subscription and then some with that player prop tool and our best bets tool as well. You could also win your fantasy football championship with the best fantasy football tools that we have on the planet and the best mock draft simulator on the planet, that the same one that every NFL general manager uses to prepare for the 2026 NFL draft is available to you guys as well, the PFF Plus subscription. Again, all of that 30% off right now when you use the promo code HOLIDAY30 as well. So again, use that promo code right now. This one will not last very long either. 30% off PFF Plus right now with the promo code HOLIDAY30. You got a super chat from our guy Donnie. Really appreciate it, Donnie, in the chat saying, amazing job this year, boys. Here's to a great college football playoff. Appreciate that, Donnie. One more week, though. So one more great week of college football before we get to the playoff. Dalton, I want to hit our guy Andrew Harbaugh's message in the chat, too, first, saying he saw us in the Paramount 5-star series. Yeah, actually, we can keep that under wraps for a little while now. Paramount Plus just dropped a documentary series covering a few 5-star recruits throughout their true freshman years in college football, and they reached out to us, and they're actually using a good amount of clips from our show in that series. I believe they're covering Devin Sanchez, the corner at Ohio State, Bryce Underwood, the quarterback at Michigan, which I can't wait to watch his true freshman year unfold there as well. So, yeah, I'm really excited to watch. I forgot the two other ones. Decorian Moore, the wide receiver at Oregon, and an offensive tackle at Penn State, too, a true freshman. We didn't really play much this year, too, but can't wait to watch that show this year, honestly.
No, outstanding stuff, and honestly, you see the bigger impact that true freshmen have every year. I think it really does shed some light on what they go through in their first season, and even if they can, whether they can help the team or not, or even as somebody who's a second stringer and kind of working their way up through the roster, I think it is important to see what those guys have to go through in their first season in college football, and some of them lately especially have been making a huge impact, not just those 4 guys, but tons of guys across the board, even some we're going to talk about today.
Yeah, by the way, it was Devin Sanchez, Bryce Underwood, Malachi Goodman was the offensive tackle at Penn State who they covered all year, and then Decorian Moore, the wide receiver at Oregon, who they covered too. So shout out to them for including us in that show. We were very appreciative of that. Dalton, some other news involving a 5-star recruit just happened. The number 1 quarterback in the country, Jared Curtis, flipped from Georgia, Kirby Smart and Georgia, to Vanderbilt, staying home in Nashville, the number 1 quarterback in the class of 2026 and the, I believe, number 3 overall player in the class of 2026. The number 3 overall is going from Georgia to Vanderbilt just a day before National Signing Day. That, to me, this is earth-shattering news in college football.
Absolutely. I think when you just think about it in the context of Vanderbilt's program, right, the biggest question going to be asked about Vanderbilt is, okay, can you do this without Diego Pavia? Can you be a real SEC contender without this guy leading your team, having a Heisman-caliber season, right? And it appears that Vanderbilt and Clark Lee signing, the 6-year extension that he signed, is now committed to really getting those types of players, especially one they get to keep in your hometown in Nashville. Very possible, I would say, that he starts in his true freshman year,
yes.
Right? We see that this year from Bryce Underwood at Michigan, the number one quarterback in the country starting, and now Curtis gets to leave his mark on his hometown possibly and replacing an absolute legend, a Vanderbilt legend now in Diego
Probably
Pavia.
a Heisman finalist, yeah.
Exactly, and it gives you hope that going into future years that Vanderbilt can continue this momentum and compete at the top of the SEC like they have been this year. Just an outstanding get for Vanderbilt's program, for Clark Lee, and what he's building there now off of the momentum of the last 2 years. They're a dangerous program moving forward.
I would argue that Jared Curtis going from Georgia to Vanderbilt is as big as Bryce Underwood going from LSU to Michigan, and as big as, honestly, any commit flip or any commitment we've had in college football in history. Honestly, this is a massive commitment for Vanderbilt football. And, we heard a lot of rumblings that he might flip to Vanderbilt. There's two things he wanted from Vanderbilt, though. One, a great NIL package, which, of course, I'm sure they presented to him. That was very comparable, at least to what Georgia was offering. And two, he wanted to play as a true freshman. That was not happening at Georgia next year because Gunnar Stockton most likely is going back for another year. He will be the starter. Jared Curtis wanted to play immediately. Going to Vanderbilt provides you that opportunity because Diego Pavia is not going to be there at Vanderbilt next year. He's out of eligibility. So Jared Curtis, I would pretty much guarantee it right now, he will be the starting quarterback for Vanderbilt football next year. Outstanding job by Vanderbilt. I also heard that he wanted Clark Lee to get extended because there's some rumblings about Clark Lee potentially leaving Vanderbilt for another job. He, of course, did get extended, so he is staying at Vanderbilt. Amazing job by Vanderbilt. How about this, Dalton? The top two quarterbacks in the class of 2026, the number 3 overall recruit, the number 4 overall recruit. The number 1 quarterback, Jared Curtis, going to Vanderbilt. The number 2 quarterback, Keyshawn Henderson, from Houston, going to Houston. A couple kids who are staying in their hometown and going to a couple programs that don't usually get these top-notch recruits like that.
If you have the cash and you can pay these guys, then they might actually be able to go to your schools. And I think, is Connor Wigman out of eligibility too?
I think he might have one more year. Let me look real quick.
Because the one thing I was going to say is I think you're seeing more and more, with quarterbacks in general, all across college football, and especially with true freshman quarterbacks, it feels like the number one goal, because there can only be one on the field at a time, is playing time, right? We've seen that the last couple of years. Dante Moore, a couple of years ago, flipping to UCLA so he could get playing time as a freshman, right? Other than he would have had to sit behind Bo Nix. He wasn't going to play ahead of Bo Nix, right? Jaron Kiabe Sagapolatelli over there, same thing, committed to Oregon. Dante then at Oregon now with a year under his belt as the backup already. He gets to start at Cal, has a great season. Bryce Underwood at Michigan. Now Jared Curtis. I think you're seeing this more and more, that a lot of these true freshman quarterbacks, unless they're going to some big time program, you're talking, say, like a Keelan Russell going to Alabama, right, sitting behind Ty Simpson. I think a lot of them are looking at it going, you know what, I can play right away. And if something there doesn't work out, or it really does work out and I play even further above expectation, then I could transfer eventually then anyway, right? We're seeing quarterbacks who have played at 2, 3, 4 different schools now in college football, and I think that flexibility, having that every year and constantly having a way for quarterbacks to find playing time, it's playing a big factor in these decisions.
And a great point by Andrew Harbaugh on the chat, who also said, call me Steve Nash with that assist right there. That's a great point because, he did have an excellent assist right there. Connor Wigman has one more year of eligibility, by the way. He's a redshirt junior this year, so he might go back for another year, and maybe Keyshawn doesn't start as a true freshman. But a great point by Andrew Harbaugh saying, this is something I'm going to reference when people complain about NIL now. This is not possible without NIL, because players playing on the field is when they're most valuable. You're gone are the days now. Of course, there still are some guys who are willing to sit for 1 or 2 years, like Arch Manning, of course, at Texas. But there are plenty of guys now who say, hey, I got to play. So if I can't go to Alabama or Ohio State or Georgia and wait 2 or 3 years to play. They want to play right now in this NIL era. Great job by Vanderbilt for doing this. And yeah, in this era of NIL, this is happening a lot more. And it's just awesome to see these kind of kids go to other programs like Vanderbilt, like Houston, to get opportunities to play right away. And honestly, just helps out the parity in college football overall.
No, absolutely. And I think it is different at the quarterback position. Like, if you're a 5-star defensive end, you could go to almost any school in the country and at least get a rotational role, right? You think about some of the guys that come in, like an Elijah Griffin for Georgia, right? Where it's, okay, he's not the team leader in snaps, right, on the defensive line. They're always stacked every year at that position, but he gets in the rotation. There isn't a rotation for a quarterback, right? It's either you're the starter or you're not, and there's only one on the field at a time. So I think the thinking is different for that exact position than it would be for a running back, right? Is an Oregon playing a two freshman running back running backs significant snaps this season, right? Receiver, a DeCorian Moore, even if he wasn't Oregon's best receiver, he would still work his way into the rotation, right? Even if you're not a Jeremiah Smith level guy. But at quarterback, you have to be the guy, and you have to be able to get that one spot on the field to prove yourself. So I do think the line of thinking is different for that position, as it usually is, than every other one.
Absolutely. So National Signing Day is tomorrow. We will actually cover National Signing Day on Friday, go over the top 10 recruits overall, go over some of the best classes overall, and kind of break down their tape a little bit and say, okay, what do we think of these guys going into their true freshman years? But this is massive news, man. Jared Curtis, who I watched a lot, he has ridiculous arm talent, man. He's got a lot of comparisons to Matthew Stafford in the past. People thought he would follow Stafford in his shoes to Georgia. He flipped to stay in his hometown of Nashville to Vanderbilt, which is honestly is awful news for Georgia. I think it's awesome news for the rest of college football. I think this is really, really fun.
Yeah, I mean, Georgia, look, they're always able to recruit, so I'm not really necessarily worried about their long-term future and Kirby Smart being able to acquire players. And they're likely going to have Gunnar Stockton for one more year as well. So they got another year to figure it out. They'll have the veteran Stockton in there next year most likely as well. So, I'm not worried about their ability to recruit or anything like that. But for Vanderbilt, I mean, what a huge day it is, right? When you talk about, okay, again, the biggest question is, can they do it without Pavia? Is this just Diego Pavia magic? Is just the one guy that made this team relevant? You're trying to be a long-term relevant program. You get guys like this to come in and really sustain that and keep the winning going.
Absolutely. All right. Let's move on from massive recruiting news and get into the 9 massive games that we have this weekend. All 9 conference championship games will be covered here on this preview show. First up, we got Kennesaw State at Jacksonville State in the Conference USA Championship game, Friday night, 7 p.m. Eastern Time on the CBS Sports Network. Before we start, I want to first apologize to the Jacksonville State faithful and our guy Kyron Samuels who played at Jacksonville State. This is one of the few helmets that we do not have. So we have a PFF helmet on the desk right there. We have the Kennesaw State helmet. I believe this is the second year in a row now where we've covered Jacksonville State in the Conference USA title game. We don't have the helmet. We got to fix that pretty soon. We got to get Jacksonville State.
Somebody at or associated with Jacksonville State, please send us a mini helmet. So next year when you could be in the conference title game again, we can cover your game with the mini helmet on the desk.
Again, apologies. There are legitimately like 8 schools in the country where we don't have a mini helmet for them, and unfortunately Jacksonville State is one of them. So we have the PFF helmet in this place right there. But listen, Jacksonville State, man, they're trying to go back-to-back in Conference USA. Kennesaw State, meanwhile, searching for its first Conference USA titles. And both these programs are doing really well despite being relatively new to the FBS. Jacksonville State made the move up to the FBS in 2023, and they have been incredibly consistent since they moved up. They have won 9 games in each of their 2 years in the FBS, including a Conference USA title last year. And even though they lost their head coach in Rich Rodriguez, who took over the West Virginia job, Charles Kelly still has this program humming along right now with an 8-4 record so far this year, and they're once again in the Conference USA title game. Kennesaw State, meanwhile, is even newer to the FBS. They joined the FBS just last year. In fact, Kennesaw State didn't start playing football until 2015. So it's only been 10 years where they've been a program overall, and they've done a great job overall. The Owls last year, only 2-10 in their first year in the FBS, which then led to them making a change at head coach and hiring Jerry Mack, who was the Jacksonville Jaguars running backs coach, to be their new head coach. That move worked wonders for the Owls because right now Kennesaw State has a 9-3 record so far this year after going 2-10 last year. These two teams did meet just 3 weeks ago, with Jacksonville State coming out on top by a final score of 35-26 at home, and the Gamecocks will once again host this game.
Yeah, no, absolutely, and it was a fun game between these two the first time that Jacksonville State got the win, and that's why they're playing at home in this game. But you mentioned it, Charles Kelly and Jerry Mack just both doing absolutely stellar coaching jobs, both of them in their first year with these programs, and both of them getting to the Conference USA title game. I think this is going to be a fascinating game, and 2 real upstart programs, and I think 2 programs that better proof that you can move up from the FCS level and have pretty quick success right here. Both of them only taking a couple years to have that success, and Jacksonville State looking to win this conference for the second year in a row.
Definitely. So you have the Kennesaw State offense. What should we know when the Owls have the ball in this game?
So this offense, very much like, one of those Josh Heupel or Alex Golesh type offenses. It's up-tempo. They spread you out with formations. They want to create explosive plays. They'll run the ball between the tackles, run some power schemes a little bit, but they really want to spread you out, run up-tempo, and create explosives down the field. It starts with Kennesaw State's quarterback, Amari Odom, who honestly I would kind of describe as Diet Byron Brown, right? He's not quite the athlete that Byron Brown is, but he's 6'4", he's 205 pounds, he's got a huge arm, and I think that's the biggest asset for him is that he's a great deep ball passer. 94.6 passing grade this year on 20-plus yard throws, 8th best in the country. How about this, Max? He's completed 61.1% of his deep balls this year and 21.7 yards per attempt on his deep balls this year. Second in the country in both categories, behind who?
Julian Sain?
Ohio State's Julian Sain, the only one who's been completing his deep balls more often than Amari Odom. 12 deep touchdowns as well. When you watch this team, it's a little bit, again, like Josh Heupel's offense at Tennessee. It's go routes, it's deep posts, it's Amari Odom throwing the ball as far as he can. In this matchup, the first time when things got a little bit condensed, he threw 3 interceptions down in the red zone. That's the one concern when you get with this offense. When the over-the-top plays are taken away by the condensed field down in the red zone, how are you going to respond? That's going to be a big part of what Odom has to do is be more successful in the red zone, be a little bit safer with the football. But make no mistake, this is an explosive offense, especially over the top. Jacksonville State played a lot more deep zone coverage, 2-deep coverage than they would normally against this team, and it worked the first time. Curious to see if that works again, and if Odom can get the ball downfield to his weapons, especially Christian Benyard, the speedster.
Absolutely. It's all about the passing game for Kennesaw State's offense, and of course, it's all about the run game for Jacksonville State's offense. Even though Rich Rodriguez is no longer the coach of this program, his mantra of running the absolute piss out of the football still remains at Jacksonville State. The Gamecocks run the ball on over 58% of their plays. That's a 10th highest rate in college football, and they have a workhorse to rely on, and Cam Cook as well. The TCU transfer leads all running backs in college football this year with 276 carries. He also leads the country with 1,574 rushing yards. He also leads the country with 93 broken tackles, and he also leads the country with 49 explosive runs this year. Jacksonville State also has a very mobile quarterback in Caden Creel, who has 988 rushing yards on the year, 6th among all quarterbacks in the country. His 641 yards after contact are 3rd among all quarterbacks in the country as well. And Kennesaw State's defense has been relatively average against the run this year. They're right now 73rd in run defense grade and 87th in yards per carry allowed. And when Jacksonville State beat Kennesaw State just 3 weeks ago, Cam Cook ran for 123 yards and a touchdown. Caden Creel ran for 118 yards and 2 touchdowns on the ground. If Kennesaw State wants to win its first Conference USA championship, they have to slow down the duo of Cam Cook and Caden Creel on the ground in this game.
No, absolutely, and it's funny with Jacksonville State's quarterback situation because they came into the year with Kentucky transfer Gavin Wimsatt as their starting quarterback, lost 3 games, and then made the switch to Creel full-time as the starter, and they've only lost 1 game since. And Cam Cook, he's been one of the best running backs in college football all season. So this running game, you really get a contrast in styles here. Apologies to Kennesaw State, their top receiver, Gabriel Benyard, and their number 2 receiver, Christian Moss. Put the 2 of them together there, but both dynamic threats downfield. But you get the high-octane passing attack of Kennesaw State. You get the high-octane rushing attack of Jacksonville State. Last time, it was the Gamecocks who came out with the win with their running game and forcing turnovers from Amari Odom. We'll see if they can do the same in this game.
Yeah, kind of a clash of styles between these two teams in this one. Dalton, ultimately, will Jacksonville State go back-to-back in Conference USA, or will Kennesaw State win their first Conference USA title?
I think this is a 50-50 game. I really do. I think you got two pretty good teams and two pretty good offenses here. And last time, I thought a big part of Kennesaw State's failures in that game were the turnovers from Odom, right? So if he can be safer with the football and create those explosive passes, also only completed one deep ball that entire game. So Jacksonville State did a really good job of making him work for that production and then clamping down in the red zone. I think it's 50-50. I think both teams are really good. I'm also trying to catch up in our game pick standings here a little bit. I'm going to go with the road team here. Give me the Owls 34-31. Kennesaw State, the Conference USA champion.
All right, I'm going to take Jacksonville State to win this game. I'm kind of with Donnie in the chat saying it is hard to beat a team twice. That is true, but I do like the run game that Jacksonville State has in this one. I think Kennesaw State might be a little too reliant on their quarterback, Amari Odom, in this one too. So Jacksonville State wins this game 31-30. It should be a coin flip game. Should be an awesome game that we get on Friday night. But Jacksonville State wins this game and captures their second straight Conference USA championship. All right, next up, also at Friday on 7 p.m., is Troy at James Madison in the Sun Belt Championship. Again, 7 p.m. Eastern Time on ESPN on Friday. The storyline to know in this game, James Madison is fighting for a potential college football playoff spot, even though it's likely that the Group of 5 spot in the playoff will go to the winner of the American title game that we'll get to later on between Tulane and North Texas. James Madison is still very much alive for a playoff spot right now. Right now, the Dukes are 11-1 on the year. Their only loss came to an 8-4 Louisville team back in Week 2. And the Dukes need Duke to beat Virginia in the ACC Championship game because it is incredibly unlikely that an 8-5 Duke team would get in over a 12-1 James Madison team. And again, reminder, there needs to be 5 conference champions in the playoff. It doesn't have to be all 4 Power 4 conferences. It could be 3 Power 4 conferences and 2 Group of 5 conferences. If Duke wins the ACC title, it's very likely that James Madison will also make the playoff along with Tulane or North Texas, and we get 2 Group of 5 teams in the playoff as well. So James Madison's, of course, got to win this game first, but they got to win this game and then root like all hell for Duke to beat Virginia in the ACC title game. James Madison is searching for their first Sun Belt title since joining the conference in 2022. Troy, who has an 8-4 record on the year, they're looking to win their 9th Sun Belt title and 3rd in the last 4 seasons, and it's also the first time that James Madison and Troy are playing each other this year.
I'll be very curious to see also, you mentioned about the American champion in that game we're going to cover in a little bit, having a big advantage, and we're recording this preview before the newest CFP rankings come out, but I'm curious to see who the new teams are that are in. Each team from 19 to 23 in last week's rankings, they all lost. 5 teams right there that all lost, 5 teams that at least have the potential to drop out. How close are North Texas and James Madison both to being ranked? Where will they be in relation to Tulane? Is a Tulane or North Texas ranked win at the end of it all? Certainly Tulane being already ranked at number 24 has an advantage there, but how far do they move up in those rankings in that range right there? And do James Madison and or North Texas get ranked? I think that's a huge storyline tonight going into these rankings that we're going to see, and then moving into the weekend as these games happen, both on Friday. So we'll know by the end of Friday maybe where things stand between all 3 of these teams.
Definitely. All right, Dalton, you have the Troy offense in this game against what's been one of the best defenses in college football in James Madison. What should we know in that matchup?
So Goose Crowder came back, Troy's starting quarterback, for the last couple of games, and they've won 2 big games recently, especially the game that got him into this spot, again with a big win at Southern Miss that you correctly called out with your last upset pick of the year. Nice job. But they've got an absolute monster to deal with this James Madison secondary. James Madison is tied for the top coverage grade in the country as a team with Texas Tech, Max. 9th in yards per attempt allowed, 12th in explosive pass rate allowed, tied with Notre Dame for the most forced incompletions in the country, and they lock it up man-to-man with these corners, the 12th highest man-to-man rate in college football this season. When you look at this secondary and the way they've been able to just light teams up, Justin Eaglin and Elijah Culp on the outside, DJ Barksdale in the slot, also a really good pair of safeties behind him. I think that's really where it starts when you talk about this James Madison team preventing explosive plays. You cannot throw the football on this team. They will lock you down man-to-man. They're ball hawks. They read the football well in zone coverage. There has not been a team this year that has dominated them through the air, and I think Goose Crowder in this Troy passing game is really going to have a hard time doing it again this week. Their passing game's been inconsistent this year. They're going to want to slow the game down and run the football. I would not want to throw into the teeth of this secondary that, again, is tied for the national lead with Texas Tech in coverage grade.
Absolutely, yeah. Troy also needs to control the line of scrimmage in this game and wrap up James Madison's ball carriers, because the best part of James Madison's offense is its run game. And James Madison, they run the ball at the 9th highest rate in the country. See right there, over 59% this year. Right now, they're 8th in rushing grade, 17th in run blocking grade, and they're 4th in the country with 2.7 yards before contact per attempt. That offensive line has created holes in the run game, and also James Madison has a very diverse backfield that confuses defenses with who has the ball on any given play. Wayne Knight, the running back, is 2nd in the Sun Belt this year with 1,045 rushing yards. Alonzo Barnett III, the quarterback, is tied for 9th among all quarterbacks in the country with 9 rushing touchdowns on the season. And also their backup running back, Jordan Fuller, has also been very effective in a more limited role. He has an 86.9 PFF grade on the year. The Dukes really like to get downhill, north and south in the run schemes. Not a lot of east and west in their run schemes, because right now they only run outside zone on about 12% of their plays this year. It's only 89th in the country. It's a very gap-heavy scheme and a very inside zone-heavy scheme that James Madison runs. And Troy has had a relatively average run defense this year. Right now, 70th in the country with an 83.3 run defense grade. And a big issue for Troy has been bringing down ball carriers, because right now, 59.6 tackling grade is 112th in college football. And on inside zone or gap scheme runs, Troy is only 109th in the FBS with 5.3 yards per attempt allowed. The Trojans have to bring their hard hats and wrap up ball carriers and run defense this week without stacking the box either, because Alonzo Barnett and James Madison's receivers are still very, very talented. So you can't just stack the box on this James Madison team. You've got to play a lot better in run defense against a team that's going to get right downhill on you.
They're talented. They get downhill north and south in the run game. They get downhill north and south in the passing game too. When they decide to take those deep play action shots, they're generally right down the middle of the field when your linebackers step up, when your safeties step up. So it's a dangerous two-dimensional offense, but you're right. It starts with Knight and Barnett on the ground, picking up big plays on early downs and then taking those shots over the top with Barnett over the middle of the field.
So will James Madison win the Sun Belt Championship, Dalton, their first Sun Belt title, and create a interesting conversation for the playoff committee? Or will Troy pull off what is probably the biggest upset we could see this weekend?
I think James Madison gets it done at home. It's especially for me, this defense, that they're just lights out. I mean, they've been lights out for most of this season. Last week when, maybe going to Coastal Carolina could have been a trap game. They're still in the Sun Belt title game, but racing for the playoffs. And I think if you're Troy, you've got to find a way to run the football in this game. I'm not sure that if you get into obvious passing situations that there's going to be a route for Goose Crowder to have a lot of success here. I like the JMU secondary. I like the run game, like you mentioned. And honestly, they got a really good football team. If there's a reason they're left out of the playoff with a win, it's going to be the strength of schedule. And it's going to be the fact that this is just the second team they've beaten all year with a winning record. But 35-14 Dukes, I think they take care of business.
I also have it as a 21-point difference. I have it 38-17, James Madison over Troy. I think Troy is going to struggle to score on what's been one of the best defenses that we've seen in college football this year, and James Madison rides its run game to an easy Sun Belt title. Again, like Dalton said, Troy has to run the ball and stop the run in this game in order to have a chance at winning it. But the Dukes win this game, and again, hope that Duke can win the ACC Championship over Virginia on Saturday night, because that would most likely send James Madison to the playoff no matter what happens in the American Conference. So for anyone wondering, even though Bob Chesney accepted the job at UCLA, he is coaching in this game and will coach in the playoff if James Madison gets it too. So yes, he did accept the job, but he is coaching in this game. So both have James Madison winning. And also, Dalton, that brings us to the next game right now, UNLV at Boise State. That's a Mountain West Championship game, Friday night, 8 p.m. Eastern Time on Fox. Storyline to know in this game is that it's the third year in a row where the Mountain West Conference comes down to these two programs. It's almost become an annual tradition that the Mountain West Championship game is between UNLV and Boise State at the end of the year. Again, third consecutive season where it's come down to these two teams. And the Broncos have won each of the past two games against UNLV in the Mountain West Championship game. Boise State searching for its seventh Mountain West title overall, while UNLV still has not won the conference since joining it in 1999. These two teams did play earlier this year, with Boise State winning back in Week 8 by a 56-31 final score.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And that was a game where UNLV's defense really cost them. We know Dan Mullen's offense, Anthony Calandria, Jaden Thomas, all of this, they can score enough points for sure. The problem all year when they have struggled has been their defense. That included in that first trip to Boise. We'll see if they can come back and find a few more stops in this game, especially on the ground, but that's going to be a big theme again. I'm expecting a high-scoring game. It's going to be a lot of fun on both sides.
Absolutely. All right, you have the UNLV offense, which has had to carry this team at a lot of points this year. Dalton, what should we know in that matchup?
So, the Jaden Thomas in the run game is always in the spotlight for this UNLV team. They do want to get east and west in the run game and create explosive plays on the ground. But I thought one of the things that you saw in the first game between these two teams, Anthony Calandria with his lowest passing grade of the season against a really good Boise State secondary, and something that complements this UNLV run game so well is Calandria's ability to throw down the field, deep down the field, especially to the outer parts of the field. This season on 10-plus yard throws, 93.5 passing grade. That's the seventh best in the country, and he's top 20 in big-time throws, accurate throw rate. Basically, everything that Calandria does to throw the ball downfield complements an elite run game that UNLV has. The challenge is this time, especially with as much as he likes to throw the ball outside, I think you could easily argue that Amarion McCoy and Jeremiah Irby are the best pair of cornerbacks in the group of five. They've been outstanding since last year. Boise State plays a lot of quarters coverage, but they trust those guys in single coverage matchups outside. Can Calandria more consistently find those explosive plays on the outside, or is UNLV going to be a little bit more one-dimensional and going to have to beat Boise State in the trenches? They put up 31 points last time, but it was not Calandria's best game, and they may need even more than that to win this game if their defense is going to stay as porous as it's been all year.
Yeah, and they struggled against Boise State again, allowing 56 points in their loss to Boise State back in Week 8. And really, I'm looking at, can they limit the big plays from running back Dylan Riley in this one? Because, listen, Ashton Jeanty is no longer at Boise State, the Heisman Trophy runner-up last year, the number 6 overall pick to the Las Vegas Raiders, one of the greatest running backs we've seen in college football in recent history. But even though he's gone and left big shoes to fill, Dylan Riley has filled those shoes pretty admirably this year. Right now, the sophomore has 737 yards after contact. It's a top 20 mark in college football. And his best game of the year came against UNLV in Week 8. In that game, Dylan Riley ran for a career-high 201 rushing yards with 86 yards after contact and a touchdown. He averaged 13.4 yards per carry in that game against UNLV. That forced UNLV to commit a lot more defenders in the box in that game, and that in turn helped out quarterback Maddox Madsen to post an 89.2 passing grade with 4 touchdown passes. Maddox Madsen is a quarterback who thrives off of play action, and when defenses expect to run, Maddox Madsen is not as good when he's an obvious passing down. So Boise State's going to want to really rely on this run game once again against what's been a major struggling UNLV run defense this year. UNLV allows 6.3 yards per carry this year. I believe the only team in the country that's worse is Rutgers. So UNLV allows the second most yards per carry in college football this year. If they cannot force Maddox Madsen into obvious passing downs where he's often struggled, this defense could also struggle to come up with any stops in this game once again.
It's been a problem all year. It's been a problem against Boise State, close win week 0 over Idaho State. It was a problem against Miami, Ohio in a close win, shootout win over Air Force. I mean, you've just seen this all season. You know, they lost to New Mexico early this season. You've seen all season that this UNLV run defense is the Achilles heel, and especially going into Boise with the backs that they have. You mentioned especially Riley teeing off on them last time. What is the solution here? Because we've seen 12 games of this, and it really hasn't gotten a whole lot better. If they can't at least somewhat contain things on the ground, you're exactly right. You want to beat Boise State? The teams that have beaten them this year have forced Maddox Madsen to beat them.
Yeah.
You have to do it. If you let them get the run game going, all those tight ends get the play action game going, Boise's going to put up a lot of points. It can be done, but I'm not sure it can be done by this UNLV defense because we haven't seen it really all year.
Speaking of Dalton, will Boise State go 3 for 3 over UNLV in the Mountain West title games over the last 3 years, or will UNLV finally get the monkey off its back and pull off this win?
I do think we will get another high-scoring game because that's what these two teams do, especially against each other. I do think UNLV's run defense is a big problem because we have yet to see in basically any game this season that it hasn't been a problem, win or lose, right? And you still have those two great backs, Dylan Riley and Sire Gaines also, right? And Maddox Madsen, if he can get into the play-action concepts, then he looks pretty good. And one other thing, Boise State very rarely loses to their in-conference opponents at home, right? They lost to Fresno State earlier in the year at home, and that was pretty shocking because they just never lose games on the blue turf. I'm taking Boise State again. I think they get it done for the third straight year, 42-35. I do think Calandria will look a little bit better in this game, but it's just too many concerns for me about this UNLV defense that they're just going to get in a shootout, and with their run defense, they're going to end up on the wrong side of it again.
Yeah, I have Boise State winning as well. I have 34-30. I think the Rebels will put up more of a fight than they did earlier back in October, but their defense once again is going to struggle to stop this Boise State ground game. Boise State wins their third straight Mountain West title over UNLV. And a great point by Andrew Harbaugh in the chat saying that Dylan Riley was 9 yards shy of surpassing what Ashton Jeanty did to UNLV last year. So they made Dylan Riley looked like Ashton Jeanty in that game, honestly. He averaged over 13 yards per
And it was only, on like 14 or 15 carries,
15
right?
carries for 200 yards.
That's just...
Again, 13 yards per carry. You can't have that happen. Yeah.
Nope. It's hard enough to have their usual average of 6.5, and you're going twice that. Yeah. I mean, if he's going 13 yards a carry again, Boise's going to win.
You're getting easily a first down on every single carry in that game. You have to be better than that for UNLV. So that's priority number one is stopping this run game for Boise State. And this one, our guy Donnie in the chat is calling out a UNLV upset. He wanted one of us to call it out. Unfortunately, neither of us did. But I will admit that there is a road here for UNLV to pull this off, though. So.
No, certainly. Look, UNLV's offense is good enough to beat anybody.
Yeah.
Their defense is good enough or bad enough to lose to anybody.
Yeah.
This is the problem is you're just getting that kind of game here. And if it was in UNLV, maybe I would. The computer rankings spit out Boise as the top one, so they get the home game, and that's the other consequence here. We don't see New Mexico or San Diego State because this game was decided by computer rankings, and apparently that's the computer's favorite matchup. It wanted to see it a third year in a row.
3 years in a row now. We get Boise State and UNLV in the Mountain West title game. All right, next up. The last Friday game that we have on conference title weekend, you got North Texas at Tulane in the American Championship game Friday night, 8 p.m. Eastern Time on ABC. Very simple. The winner of this game is probably securing a college football playoff spot no matter what else happens on Saturday. It's basically a de facto college football playoff game in itself because the winner is all but guaranteed to receive that playoff spot. Tulane is 10-2 on the year. They were already the highest ranked group of 5 team going into last week. They, of course, won this past week, too. They're most likely going to be the highest ranked group of 5 team once again when the playoff announces their rankings tonight. And I'd imagine North Texas probably would join that top 25 as well. And even if James Madison is ranked above North Texas in those rankings, I would imagine North Texas beating Tulane would have them jump James Madison in the rankings, even if James Madison thumps Troy, like Dalton and I both predicted earlier. So, again, the winner of this game most likely is going to be the team that makes the playoff out of the group of 5. And listen, even if, say, James Madison is the highest ranked team for whatever reason, again, if Duke beats Virginia, both of them are getting in. James Madison and whoever wins this game in the American title game. This is also the first time that both programs are playing each other this year. And like James Madison, their head coaches will both be coaching in this game and if they make the playoff, because, of course, Tulane's John Summerall was hired by Florida. He will still be coaching Tulane through this game, and if they win the college football playoff. And also Eric Morris, the North Texas head coach, who was hired by Oklahoma State. He will also be coaching in this game and through the playoff if North Texas makes it that far. So it is cool that, yes, both those guys are moving on to a Power 4 job once their season's over, but they will finish out the year with their programs.
How about a few coaching changes that are a little bit less dramatic, huh?
Yeah, I think Lane Kiffin's the only one who's not allowed to, which I understand why he's not allowed to. By the way,
the in-conference bid is one thing. I don't know that Florida's going to poach a ton of players from Tulane, or that Oklahoma State. Well, I don't know, but Oklahoma State and North Texas, that might be a different situation. They got some young talent there at North Texas, but we'll talk about that later during our portal episodes in January. Either way, I think it's a very interesting storyline when like you mentioned, most likely Tulane, North Texas. I think especially if Tulane wins. With them already being ranked, I would think they move up a couple of spots this week, even though they kind of weirdly didn't last week. They had some other teams jump them, but they're the highest ranked one. I think Tulane certainly at home there in Yeoman Stadium, if they can get that win, they are at least one of the group of 5 teams, depending on the ACC result. They're going to be at least one of the teams in there for sure. North Texas, an interesting case. I think this would be a huge win for them. They got a solid win over Navy. And one other thing with them against James Madison, think about common opponents here, okay? James Madison played Washington State at home. They only won by 4. North Texas won by, I think, 35 or somewhere in that range. I mean, they blew out Washington State when they got to play them. So a common opponent bit there. I think North Texas, to me, their resume is a little bit better, especially if they get this win under their belt on the road. But I think it's going to be a fantastic football game between 2 talented teams and one of the rare matchups in the American that hasn't already happened this year near the top 2.
Yeah, I can't wait to watch this matchup. It should be an awesome, awesome game between 2 awesome quarterbacks. Dalton. Drew Messmaker has arguably been the best group of 5 quarterback that we've had in college football this year, and he's going against a pretty good Tulane defense.
Absolutely, a really good Tulane defense, a really good secondary, and even a good defensive line with Santana Hopper and those guys up front. Caleb Hawkins, also the true freshman running back, has just been terrific all year. But I want to talk about this passing game. They hit a little bit of a lull in the middle of the season, and then they kind of moved around the rotation of wide receivers that they're targeting more often, that are on the field more often. And a guy we need to talk about in the slot, number 10, this is a dynamic football player, Wyatt Young, of North Texas. Listen here, Max. Not Mekhi Lemon, not Jeremiah Smith, not Carnell Tate. Wyatt Young from North Texas has the highest receiving grade in the country.
Damn.
92.3 receiving grade. 4.44 yards per route run. That's like what Jackson Smith and Jigba was doing this year in the NFL. Way higher than any other receiver in the country. 25 missed tackles forced. 11.4 yards after catch per reception. Those are top 5 numbers. And this is a guy who didn't get a ton of targets until the second half of the season. And he has just absolutely exploded. He's a crafty route runner. He finds holes in the middle of zone defenses over the middle of the field, which is a big problem for Tulane. Over the middle third of the field, they're 122nd in the nation in coverage grade. Wyatt Young is easily the highest graded receiver in that area of the field in the country. He is almost 300 yards more than any other wide receiver over the middle third of the field. He picks apart zone defenses, and then he's also really good in the screen game. Sometimes they put him even in the backfield to mess with the alignment a little bit. If you're watching this North Texas passing game, or if you're Tulane's defense, you need to know where number 10 is, either in the slot or sometimes in the backfield or motioning at all times. This is a dynamic playmaker who, look, North Texas, they want to spread you out with formations. They want to run Caleb Hawkins downhill, but what they were missing for a little bit in the middle of the season was a threat over the middle to really attack the seams and the intermediate zones of defenses. Wyatt Young has filled that gap, and they've now scored 50 points in 5 of their last 6 games because of it, and it's because of the emergence of this receiver in the slot. He's really dangerous, and I think he could be a bad matchup for all of Tulane's zone defenses over the middle.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm also looking at Tulane's offense in this game, and I'm looking at, can North Texas do anything to speed Jake Retzlaff up in this one? Tulane has had a very successful passing attack this year. They're 15th in the country with about a 43% successful play rate on passing plays this year. Jake Retzlaff is 19th in the country with an 86.4 PFF grade, and Tulane is 22nd in receiving grade this year. There is a pretty stark contrast with how effective Retzlaff is when he's blitzed and when he's not blitzed. He very prefers to not be blitzed. And this is actually something that goes back to the BYU days as well. This year, 86.7 passing grade when not blitzed, tied for 7th among all quarterbacks in the country. but a 66.1 passing grade when he is blitzed is only 76. And we actually interviewed Jake Retzloff last year while he was at BYU, and he was also outstanding when he was not blitzed and not as good when he was blitzed. We actually asked him about that, and so here's what he had to say.
Yeah, I mean, I think that at this point in my career, I've seen defenses a lot, and the basic defenses are the ones you've seen the most. And so when they only send 4, the odds are the defense is a pretty basic structure of cover 3, a pretty basic structure of cover 4, cover 2, or even one rat. And so, like, when they only send 4, I know that the structure is what the structure is, and it's not bizarre. I think that when guys blitz and teams are rotating, it can honestly get a little more complicated, and it's more an art to me to tear up the blitz defense than it is to tear up the basic defense. Because when they only send 4, man, you're never doing something crazy in the field. Because, and I don't know why it is, and so I feel like I see it well, and I know the holes in every coverage. Like I said, when you watch a lot of film in the offseason like I did, man, I know how every one of our route concepts works out versus against any defense, especially the basic ones, because you see them so much. And so just knowing that in my mind and approaching every play like that, it makes it easier to just tear it up.
Love the hair from you, Dalton, in that clip, by the way.
I know, right? Remember those days? I was going to say that guy on the left looks like he makes some terrible quarterback rankings. Just some awful quarterback rankings he makes. Man,
he does.
Oh, man.
But
I was hacked that day.
Yeah, of course. Speaking of that, though, North Texas' outstanding coverage unit right now. They're 16th in the country in coverage grade, but North Texas only send a blitz about 35% of the time. It's only 82nd in college football. I think defensive coordinator Skylar Cassidy would be very, very wise to blitz Jake Retzloff a lot more on Friday night.
No, absolutely. I think that's always the key. If you can get some sort of pressure on him, he can be kind of a loose cannon back there. Now, the dangerous part of that, too, is Retzloff has been using his legs more than ever this season. Really, since the beginning of the year, he's turned it up. It feels like John Summerall told him from the beginning of the year, hey, man, you're one of the best athletes out here on this field. You're in the group of 5. You're in the American now. Go ahead and take off running on him. And he's been outstanding with his legs all year. So that is the one danger. If you do blitz him and he breaks the pocket, you're going to have a problem because he's been creating explosive runs all year on the ground as well.
Definitely. All right, Dalton, who will pretty much clinch a spot in the college football playoff between Tulane and North Texas in the American Championship game?
This is a hard one. This is as hard of a game as we've had, I think, all year to pick. It's in Tulane. Tulane's defense even plays a lot better at home down there at Yeoman Stadium. Is this the 3rd straight year they've been in the American title game?
I think it might be.
Third or 3 out of 4, something like that. I mean, they lost to Army at Army last year, but, I mean, look, both of these teams are outstanding. I think they both have really good quarterbacks, really good offenses that can bring some level of balance. I'll be honest with you here, man. This is a hard one. But you know what? I'm going to take North Texas to go in there and get the win. I think the difference with Wyatt Young there at receiver, along with the just supreme talent you have with Caleb Hawkins at running back, that's a big deal. But I think the winner of this game is going to be the team that gets more balance, especially from the ground game. I trust Hawkins a little bit more with that. I think Retzloff, if Tulane's going to do it, they have to do it through Retzloff with his legs, with the read option game, with the bootleg game like they've been doing all year. I think we get a fantastic football game, a true coin flip. I'm taking North Texas high-scoring 38-35.
Tulane's actually made it to 4 straight.
Oh, it's 4 straight.
Okay.
But
they've lost 3 straight. So, not great. They haven't won since 2022 when they beat UCF. Unfortunately for Green Wave fans, I'm with you, Dalton. I'm also taking North Texas to win this game, 35-31. So Tulane, unfortunately, will lose their 3rd straight American Championship game. Actually, they've lost 2 straight so far. Excuse me.
And clearly, if Tulane wins, then I'll have just never learned my lesson about doubting Jake Retzloff.
Exactly. No, they've lost 2 straight so far. I think they're going to lose 3 straight in this one to North Texas. Should be a great game between 2 great quarterbacks that we have in the Group of 5 level, and Drew Messmaker and Jake Retzloff. But I think the difference in this game, Tulane has not really had much of a run game to speak of this year, while North Texas, of course, has a superstar in running back Caleb Hawkins. I think North Texas will have the more balanced offense in this game, and North Texas will win their first conference title since their Sun Belt Championship 21 years ago, and North Texas all but clinches a spot in the college football playoff with a win over Tulane.
I think that last part is interesting, though. I want to see what the rankings look like tonight, just in case. I mean, if both or either of North Texas or James Madison are ranked, or if they're both not ranked, then we still for another week don't know the committee's opinion on either of them. I think it's a fascinating ranking we're going to see tonight with all these teams.
We got Andrew Harbaugh in the chat saying we got to give Caleb Hawkins a nickname, like a Caleb Stranger Things Hawkins, because the town in Stranger Things is Hawkins, Indiana. Are you watching Stranger Things, by the way?
No.
Just dropped. Season 5 just dropped. I'm one episode in, so nobody spoil anything in the chat right now. I'm one episode in right now. I'm going to watch episode 2 tonight.
Wow. I'm probably going to upset the chat with this one, but I haven't watched 1 through 4 either.
You have to.
I just
have to.
Just never got around to it,
It's an incredible show. It's an absolutely incredible show. But yeah, 35-31, I have North Texas beating Tulane. Last game that we have in the Group of 5 championship preview is on Saturday, Western Michigan against Miami of Ohio in the MAC championship game in Detroit. Actually, it's the first neutral site game we're talking about today at Ford Field, 12 p.m. Eastern Time on ESPN on Saturday. Miami back in familiar territory, while Western Michigan is looking for their first MAC title in 9 years. The Redhawks have now made it to 3 straight MAC championship games, and they last won the conference in 2023. Head coach Chuck Martin will try to deliver the program its 18th MAC title overall with a win on Saturday. Western Michigan, meanwhile, is back in the MAC championship game for the first time since 2016, which was also the final year their head coach, PJ Fleck, was with the program before he took over the Minnesota job. The Broncos won that game, taking down Ohio at Ford Field. A win for Western Michigan would be its 4th MAC championship in program history. These two teams did meet back in October, with Miami winning 26-17 at home in that game.
Absolutely, and Miami's got quite a different dynamic right now with their quarterback situation, starting redshirt freshman Thomas Gostkowski after Daquan Finn's season ended with an injury, but they've won their last 2 games. They managed to win a 3-way tiebreaker, so I think to get into second place here in this conference, but this has really been a wide-open conference all year, and these are the last 2 teams standing. Western Michigan with the best record, but like you said, a neutral site game here in Detroit. It's going to be a fun matchup, and they're going to try to get their revenge here too, because I believe that was Western Michigan's only conference loss, that game to Miami. So trying to get revenge here, trying to get themselves, like you mentioned, the first MAC title for them since PJ Fleck was there.
Yep. So you have the Miami of Ohio offense in this one, which when the Redhawks have the ball in this game.
So watching just the 2 starts we've seen of redshirt freshman Thomas Gostkowski here from Miami, and what he is, he's a guy who likes to hold on to the football a little bit and sling it deep down the field, kind of a low percentage passer. How about more than a 15-yard average depth of target through 2 starts for him, and he's going to want to try to get over these zone defenses of Western Michigan. They play a lot of zone defense. They want to keep things in front of him, but if he wants to hold on to the football too long, he's going to have a hard time, because Western Michigan's pass rush is really good, led by the edge rusher Nadame Tucker. 51 pressures, 12 sacks this season. He is 7th in the nation in pass rush grade. The only player in the country with more sacks, Texas Tech's David Bailey. This Western Michigan pass rush led by Tucker is a real problem. They're 31st in the nation as a team in pass rush grade. They are top 25 in pressure rate, pass rush win rate, and sacks. 12th most sacks in the nation. If Gostkowski doesn't get rid of the football quickly and I think attack the seams of this defense, that's something Daquan Finn did very well against Western Michigan, was not necessarily get the football over the top, because they run a lot of deep zone coverages, but get it into the seams, work the middle of the field right around the hash marks a little bit. Gostkowski can have success, but he's got to be a little more accurate underneath, and he's got to get rid of the football quickly. I think that's going to be a big thing. How often can Western Michigan's pass rush, Tucker and that defensive line, disrupt Gostkowski's rhythm and make him break outside the pocket and make throws underneath zone coverage?
Yeah, so you're looking at the quarterback as a passer for Miami of Ohio. I'm looking at Western Michigan's quarterback as a runner in this game, because Brock Lowry has been really dynamic on the ground this year for the Broncos offense. He has 971 rushing yards this year. That leads all Western Michigan players and is also 8th among all quarterbacks in the country this year. He's also tied for 5th among all quarterbacks in America with 14 rushing touchdowns, and also his 89.7 rushing grade is 2nd among all quarterbacks in America. Miami is only 89th in run defense grade this year, but the Redhawks did do a pretty solid job of containing the Broncos' backfield back in their matchup in Week 9. Brock Lowry had 97 rushing yards and a fumble in that game in Western Michigan's loss, while the rest of Western Michigan combined for only 50 total rushing yards in that game. Brock Lowry also only had a 54.8 passing grade in that loss to Miami, and it's very unlikely that the Broncos will get much going through the air in this game against a Miami pass rush. So a lot like Western Michigan, Dalton, Miami is 4th in pass rush grade this year too. So I think Western Michigan has to run the ball better than what they did back in Week 9 against Miami of Ohio, and that starts with quarterback Brock Lowry.
I think a similar vibe. Remember last year when we talked about this matchup against Ohio, and it was Parker Navarro coming in here against Miami, and something I highlighted in that game was, okay, Parker Navarro's ability to run the football at quarterback, as well as last year with Ohio, Anthony Tyus, and they ran the ball for 238 yards in that game. You get a similar vibe here with Western Michigan's offense. It's very run-heavy. They want to stay out of obvious passing situations against this team. And one thing Miami did earlier in the year against Western Michigan was get ahead early, right? Yep. And if they can force them into those obvious passing situations to come from behind, then I think Western Michigan has a problem there. Can Western Michigan match the physicality of Miami's defense? Can they create those holes in the run game, create those explosive plays? Because if they get into, 3rd and 7, 3rd and 8, I think they are going to have some issues here with this Miami defense.
Definitely. All right, Dalton. Will Western Michigan win their first MAC title in 9 years, or will Miami of Ohio win their second MAC title over the last 3 years?
Fascinating matchup. And the one big variable, again, I think is Gostkowski, the redshirt freshman quarterback for Miami, right? If it was Daquan Finn, I think I would very confidently actually pick Miami to win in a similar fashion they did the first time. I'm gonna get it closer, but I'm actually going to take the Red Hawks anyway. I'm going to take Gostkowski to make a few explosive plays. He can move outside the pocket a little bit, and I just think this defense is fantastic. I don't think it's a great matchup for Western Michigan's offense. They have to be able to run the football well on early downs, but I think it's a hard-fought, classic defensive MAC game, and I'm taking Miami 20-17.
I have it 24-21. I have Western Michigan winning their first MAC title since 2016. And yes, Miami did beat Western Michigan back in October, but like Dalton mentioned, that was back when Daquan Finn was still with the program. Now that he's gone, I think the Broncos are going to win a very close defensive battle at Ford Field and, like I said before, win their first MAC championship in 9 years. So I have Western Michigan beating Miami 24-21. All right, that wraps up our group of 5 previews for conference title weekend. Still have to get to, of course, all 4 Power 4 previews for conference title weekend. But before we do that, gotta talk about the sponsor of the show. That is Fabric by Gerber Life. Parenting is filled with high-pressure decisions, and it can be difficult to tell if we've made the right choice for our kids' future. But here's a simple choice you can make today that can have a meaningful impact on your kids' future. And this opening a UGMA Kids Investment Account with Fabric to start their investment journey early and give them a financial head start. Fabric by Gerber Life was designed by parents for parents to make it easy to plan for and manage your family's financial path. With a kids investment account from Fabric, you can start investing in your child's future today. Kids can't invest when they're minors, but a UGMA Kids Investment Account allows you to invest on their behalf now and gives their investments more time to grow. There are no contribution limits, multiple tax advantages, and they're SIPC insured up to $500,000. Plus, no commission fees and just a low flat monthly maintenance fee. Fabric has partnered with Gerber Life, trusted by millions of families like yours for over 50 years. Join the thousands of parents who trust Fabric to help protect their family. Start investing in your child today at meetfabric.com/PFFcollege. That's meetfabric.com/PFFcollege, meetfabric.com/PFFcollege. This is a paid promotion for the Fabric UGMA product and not for investment advisory services. Portfolios are managed by Fort Washington Investment Advisors Incorporated. Custodial services provided by Apex Clear Corporation. All investing sort of risks, terms may apply. Learn more at meetfabric.com. All right, let's dive into the first of the Power 4 conference title game previews. Texas Tech against BYU in the Big 12 championship game at AT&T Stadium in Arlington, Texas. 12 p.m. Eastern Time on ESPN. Texas Tech looking to secure a first-round bye in the college football playoff, while BYU is fighting for its playoff lives right now. Texas Tech, and BYU are each playing in their first Big 12 championship games this Saturday. And also, like I said, a game with huge playoff implications. If the Red Raiders win this game, they'll most likely secure a first-round bye in the playoff with a 12-1 record overall. Even though BYU is 11-1, and I'm sure both Dalton and I would agree they should be in the playoff right now because they're not ranked that way by the committee. We'll see what they do tonight, but right now they're not ranked that way by the committee. They pretty much have to win this game against Texas Tech to clinch a playoff spot, leave no doubt, make it the playoff. Because again, at 11-2, even though Dalton and I might disagree with it and say they should be in the playoff still at 11-2, the committee will not put them in at 11-2. They need to win this game against Texas Tech. Again, these two teams met back in week 11 a few weeks ago. Texas Tech cruised to a 29-7 victory at home in this game.
I think we've got just a fascinating situation here, especially with the way I'm assuming BYU is going to stay at number 11 in these rankings. There was everybody in front of them, one except for A&M, and they're not falling that far. If BYU wins, we've got a fascinating situation because I wouldn't think that Texas Tech would drop all the way out, especially having beaten BYU already once, and their one loss was to an Arizona State team that has been ranked at times this year. But where does that leave then? Alabama? If they lose, where does that leave Notre Dame there at number 9? Say if Alabama and BYU both win, or so, and then we get the Miami situation. This really is. I know Texas Tech is pretty heavily favored, but if BYU wins, there could be massive consequences right around that at-large bubble that makes this game really interesting.
If BYU wins, I think what will happen is if Georgia also wins, and I'm not agreeing with this, but I think they'll kick out Alabama. I think it's what they're going to do. If BYU wins and Georgia wins, they would leave Notre Dame in for whatever reason, and Bama will be out. I think that's what would happen. But if Bama wins,
here's the thing.
Bama wins, then it's Notre Dame on the chopping block.
Here's your other problem. The weirdest situation is if one of them wins and the other one doesn't, because the suspense for weeks has been, how close are we getting Miami to Notre Dame? And if there's a spot where one wins and the other doesn't, and say they move, let's say BYU gets beat the same way they did last time, right? And Alabama wins. Okay, Alabama beat Georgia, they're jumping ahead of Notre Dame. They're going to be number 10. If BYU moves down, that's going to put Miami at number 11. You're going to have something, I don't know what, decide which of those two teams is the last team in.
Yep.
This SEC one and the Big 12 one are extremely consequential. I don't think in all likelihood they're safe, but boy, you get to have some sort of argument if one win. If both of them win, then you're right. Notre Dame's just going to be outright, and you're going to get Alabama, you're going to get BYU, and they'll all be in some order in there. But if only one of them does, I think that might actually be worse for Notre Dame, considering they don't want Miami inching closer to them with that argument, because we know there's been some loud arguments about it.
Yeah, there's going to be a lot of arguments about it. And I had the take on Twitter I posted yesterday. Some people disagree with it. And of course you could disagree with it. I get it. I had the take of, hey, if you make it to conference title weekend, you should not be able to move down. Whatever happens, you can't be moved down out of the playoff. I think you have earned the right to play in this game. If you win, you can move up. You got to play this game as a reward for what you did all season. There should not be a punishment attached to losing this game. That's my personal take on this. That's what happened last year with SMU. They didn't move out of the playoff even after they lost to Clemson. And Alabama, ironically, was left out because of that decision. I think it would be a horrible look if Alabama got left out last year and then they changed their way of thinking and Alabama gets left out this year for losing to Georgia. We'll get to that game later on and who we actually next and who we'll predict in that game. But that's my thinking is, hey, if you play in conference title weekend, you can, of course, move up, but you cannot get kicked out of the playoff for losing a conference title game.
And to me, Alabama missed the playoff last year, one, because they lost to Oklahoma, first and foremost. But it's not because SMU was selected to go in. It's because Clemson won and stole a spot.
Yeah.
Right? That's what it really – if SMU had won, they would have got in anyway as the ACC champ, and Bama would have been the last team in. They should be mad at Clemson more than anybody for going and winning that game. But, but look, they get a shot at redemption this year. That's another subject. But I don't know that the committee feels that way, because they have said over and over it is another data point, not something that is separate from the rest of what they've seen. So if you're BYU, you have to go in here especially already being number 11.
They have to win.
They have to win. They're going to have to win.
There's no other.
Whether it's a bad precedent and that we disagree with or not, that BYU has to win this football game.
Yeah, exactly. Texas Tech, of course, win. You get a first-round bye. Lose. There's a chance Texas Tech moves out of the home playoff entirely and maybe has to go on the road, potentially.
That I could see. You get into debates with Oklahoma.
I don't know if I would agree with that, but there's a chance I would say.
You get into debates with Oklahoma, Notre Dame. They would be behind BYU at that point.
Yeah.
I would think BYU probably get a game at Lavelle Edwards there, man, if they were to win this one. But no, this is a fascinating matchup, especially with as lopsided as we saw the first time.
Definitely. All right, let's get to the actual preview of the game right now, Dalton. You have the Texas Tech offense in this game. What should we know for that matchup?
So I think something I noticed watching the first game is Texas Tech. They've been great running the football all season, but I think something that jumps out. Now, they run inside zone runs as much as their most common run concept, somewhere I think 43 to 45% of the time. But they're actually more effective when they mix it up a little bit. They get into these gap schemes, run a little bit of these counter schemes, pulling guards, pulling tight ends all over the place. I think two guys that are really important to this offense are the tight ends, Terrence Carter and John Carlos Miller. They're really good lead blockers. They really allow runs to bounce to the edge. A lot of times they're on power schemes. They'll get a little bit of two tight end duo going up front. What does that do? I think it allows their offensive line to get downhill to the second level a little bit quicker, and it allows them to create leverage on one side of the formation in the run game. And I think this was something that BYU struggled with. First of all, in that game, gap scheme runs, Texas Tech, 20 carries, 135 yards. Pretty darn good there, 6.8 yards per carry. For the season, Texas Tech, when they run gap schemes, all right, 7th in rushing grade, 16th in yards per carry. BYU against gap schemes, this is not the only game they struggled, 104th in run defense grade, 99th in yards per carry allowed. I believe it's 5.3 yards per carry allowed. When they see gap schemes, what that tells me when I watch them is BYU's getting leverage to one side of the formation too often against these schemes, especially against these counter schemes. Their linebackers, and we've put them in the spotlight a lot, but their linebackers did not play their best game in the first game against Texas Tech. Isaiah Glasker, Jack Kelly, Siale Acera. Spotlight on you three. I know I've done it before. I did it in the Cincinnati game, and you guys were really good. But it's those three guys coming up, reading laterally, getting around second-level blocks from the offensive line, engaging these two tight ends and stuffing plays in the hole and attacking outside in, not allowing Cameron Dickey and Jacoby Williams to bounce outside with these gap schemes, especially the counter schemes when they're coming around the edge. You can't let them get outside, or then Texas Tech is really dangerous. Those are the three guys, once again, as we often are for this BYU defense that I'm watching: Glasker, Kelly, Acera, against these gap run schemes for Texas Tech. If they get that going and they get in good down and distance situations where you can't then blitz Baron Morton, you can't use the man coverage you want to use against the receivers, which I actually think worked reasonably well the first time they played. I don't think BYU's secondary played that bad a game the first time they played. Baron Morton had a passing grade in the 50s in that game. You can get to Baron Morton if you get him in obvious passing situations, but those linebackers, I think, are in the spotlight, and they have to be really good on first and second down against these schemes, the offensive line and the tight ends.
Yeah, I'm looking at the trenches for my matchup on BYU's side. BYU's offensive line against Texas Tech's defensive line, because both the BYU offense and the Texas Tech defense, they're built around the trenches. You see that graphic right there. BYU against Texas Tech in Week 11, they struggled in the trenches. Their third worst offensive line grade all year, 67 rushing yards only, season low, and they allowed 5 combined sacks or hits, really quarterback knockdowns. Actually, all 5 of them were hits. That's a season high, though, of knockdowns for BYU in that game. But BYU overall this year has been really good with their offensive line. 74.7 offensive line grade is 3rd in the Big 12, and they're 10th in the country with a 73.5 run blocking grade. That's helped a star running back in LJ Martin run for over 1,200 rushing yards this year and help keep a true freshman quarterback in Bear Bachmeier upright, which has helped him to have an 82.3 PFF grade. That's the highest among all true freshman quarterbacks this year. But like I said before, as good as that front 5 has been all year, it was no match for Texas Tech's defensive line in their matchup, because Texas Tech leads the country with a 93.6 defensive line grade this year. Their edge rusher, David Bailey, leads the nation with 70 pressures. Another edge rusher in Romello Height is second in the country with a 92.6 PFF grade. A.J. Holmes Jr. is second among all Power 4 D tackles with an 84.4 grade. And Lee Hunter is ninth among all Power 4 D tackles with an 80.8 PFF grade. So really all four of Texas Tech's starting defensive linemen are in the top 10 of the country or in the top 10 of the Power 4 in PFF grade at their position this year. And like I said, the Cougars got dominated in the trenches back in that Week 11 game. If that happens again, I don't see a world where BYU pulls off the upset and clinches a playoff spot. They have to play better in the trenches in this game, or else Texas Tech most likely will run away with this game again.
I think something I might consider if I were BYU, because you could feel in the first game, obviously they want to start running the football early in the game and establish dominance in the trenches, but you could feel in the first game that they were trying to hide Bachmeier. They were trying to hide him, right? And I don't think that can be the case if you're trying to win this conference and you're trying to go to the playoff. I almost wonder, BYU runs their offense at a relatively average tempo when it comes to offensive plays per game. But I almost wonder if you want to come out and speed things up a little bit. Let Bachmeier get in a rhythm. Loosen this defense up a little bit. Because if they come out and play number 1 and 2 and just run their usual stretch and they get 2 yards and it's 3rd and 6 against this pass rush, it could look early a lot like the game we saw the first time in Lubbock. And I think one of the themes for BYU this year at times has been a little bit of slow starts, right? You think about this game. You think about the Iowa State game. You think about the Arizona game. I think there have been times when they've just tried to kind of establish their offensive line, establish their run game, and work in sequence. And I know it's a gamble a little bit that you'd be taking, but I wonder if you work out of sequence a little bit and let Bachmeier just fire off. Let's go. Let's take some shots early and show you we're not afraid, and then we'll get back and get heavy with the tight ends in the offensive line and get in the run game. Because L.J. Martin's getting 30 touches in this game regardless, right? That's going to happen one way or the other. I think maybe a little less predictability early in the game. Even they got off to a slow start last week against UCF. I think a little bit less predictability early in the game. If Bear Bachmeier is that dude, and he showed at times that he is, let it fly in the first quarter then. Because what else? I mean, if you come out the same way you did in the first game, this defense is going to shut you down. The D-line, Jacob Rodriguez, the whole thing, they're one of the best defenses in the country. I think I might mix it up a little bit if I'm the Cougars offensively. I would.
Yeah, I would agree with that, honestly. All right, Dalton, ultimately, who will win the Big 12 championship? Will Texas Tech clinch a first-round bye in the playoff with a win over BYU and remove any hope that BYU has of probably making the playoff this year? Or will BYU win and send 2 teams from the Big 12 to the college football playoff?
I thought BYU's defense played actually not a bad game the first time around. They just kind of ran out of gas because their offense couldn't find any momentum. I think you're going to get another defensive, hard-hitting game. There's a lot of studs on the defensive side of the ball in this game for both sides. I'm still a little bit worried about A, the slow starts, and B, Texas Tech being one of the few teams, really you could argue the only team that's really stopped. Did they have, one explosive run that entire game? If I remember the stat from that Sunday show that we had, I think it was one explosive run the entire game.
I mean, only 6-7 rushing yards total, so yeah, I'm guessing that.
And I believe that one explosive run was the very first carry of the day, if I remember that right, from LJ, like a 12-yard run from LJ Martin. I mean, obviously they have to get the run game going, but I think they would have to play it a little bit backwards. I'm still worried about this might just be the one really bad matchup for BYU in conference, at least, and Texas Tech. They're the most physical team in the conference. I think BYU's going to play better, though. I think it's going to be better. Remember, they had the Parker Kingston muff punt, too, that really put them in a bad spot early, and they fell behind early in that game. I also think this game being neutral instead of, although Arlington isn't too far away, it's probably going to be heavy Texas Tech. But we've seen the BYU fans
they travel.
We've seen that ourselves.
Yeah.
I'm going to take Texas Tech. I think a better game than last time. I think their defense wins the day. If BYU's going to win, they've got to force Morton into obvious passing situations and into mistakes, because he can make mistakes under pressure now. We've known that his whole career. But Red Raiders 24, Cougars 17. I think Texas Tech just has a little bit more on defense. They are a real problem on that side of the ball.
Yeah, I'm going to actually probably please a lot of BYU fans, my prediction right here, because they got mad at me whenever I picked BYU to win the game. But I'm actually picking Texas Tech to win this game.
You broke the curse in person.
I did break it in person. I did break it in person.
I don't know if you did a little ritual in the press box.
They were still yelling at me from the stands saying, you never pick BYU again. So, I'm not doing it. I'm picking Texas Tech to win this game 34-24. It won't be as lopsided as the game a month ago, but I think the Red Raiders will win their first Big 12 championship thanks to their elite trench play over BYU by a final score of 34-24 over the BYU Cougars. All right, next up, Georgia against Alabama in the SEC Championship game. Georgia, for the second week in a row, is playing in Mercedes-Benz Stadium in Atlanta, 4 p.m. Eastern Time on ABC. It's a rematch with plenty of stakes for both programs in this game. Georgia and Alabama met back in Week 5. The Crimson Tide handed the Bulldogs their only loss of the year by a 24-21 final score. If Alabama beats Georgia again, the Crimson Tide will assure themselves of a spot in the playoff, and the Bulldogs could miss out on a first-round bye with an 11-2 record on the year. But if Georgia gets revenge, the Bulldogs will most likely be the number 2 seed in the playoff behind whoever wins the Big Ten title game on Saturday night. And it would create a very fascinating discussion surrounding a 10-3 Alabama team, considering the Crimson Tide would have been in the playoff if they didn't even play in the SEC title game. And again, like I said before, last year, Alabama was the first team left out of the playoff as the committee refused to punish an 11-2 SMU team for losing the ACC title game. Again, I made my opinion very clear. I don't think teams should be punished for playing in conference title weekend. They've earned the right to be here. They should be only rewarded for being here and not punished by removing them from the playoff altogether. But I cannot speak for the committee, and they might remove Alabama altogether if they lose to Georgia on Saturday.
It will be, if Georgia wins this game, it'll be a hell of an argument, right? But we have to remember, too, though, Kalen DeBoer now, is it 3-0 against Georgia or 2-0?
3-0, I think, yeah.
3-0. I mean, no, because they didn't win the SEC last year. They didn't play them twice last year, right? No, 2-0.
Oh, yeah, sorry, 2-0.
Last year, we had the epic game last year, and then we had kind of the weird game this year. Either way, Kalen DeBoer, 2-0 against Georgia.
Yeah.
And I think it's the one hurdle Georgia still needs to get over, plus the loss in the SEC title game 2 years ago, right, against Jalen Milroe and company. So I think what you're looking at for Georgia here is this is the one bit of redemption, like you mentioned. If this team wins this game and they get that 2 seed, they're looking pretty good all of a sudden when you look at the road that they would have to go down, and then you get the 7-10 matchup, and then you work from there. But I think this is another fascinating game, another even game. It's Alabama-Georgia, right? I mean, we don't have to set the stage too much. That's all you really have to say. It's going to be a really even football game, and it's going to be a whole lot of fun. And look, Kirby Smart, Kalen DeBoer going at it again. It's going to be another Alabama-Georgia game. That's the best way to put it. It's going to be awesome.
Absolutely. Some massive playoff stakes for both teams as well. Dalton, you have the Georgia offense in this one with a great quarterback in Gunnar Stockton. What should we know in that matchup?
All right, so one of the things I think that makes Georgia unique offensively is just the depth and the talent they have at tight end, right? Especially when you talk about Oscar Delpin, Lawson Lucky. And Georgia, because they have those two guys, uses 12 personnel, 1 back and 2 tight ends, more than almost any team in the country. 11th in the nation in 12 personnel rate. 21st in team offense grade when in 12 personnel. But this is something that Alabama has specialized in stopping this year when they bring Bray Hubbard down. They got those 3 linebackers going. Hubbard, the safety, coming down with those single high looks. Alabama, when they face 12 personnel, has the second best defensive grade in the country, and their 10th, the 10th lowest successful play rate allowed in the country when opponents are in 12 personnel. But this is something that worked for a bit for Georgia in the passing game more so than the run game. We've heard a lot of talk recently, especially at the NFL level, that you should put 2 tight ends on the field and throw the football. That's something that Alabama actually had trouble with against Georgia in the first game. Of 52 coverage grade against 12 personnel in the first game. They're lowest against any opponent this season. I think what Georgia needs to do a little bit in a different way, like I talked about with BYU in that game, I think Georgia could help themselves working a little bit backwards. Get in 12, put both those tight ends on the field, get a little bit heavy, draw them into single high, and throw the football. Then spread it back out into 10 or 11 with 3 or 4 wide receivers and run the ball, lighten the box a little bit and make those linebackers make plays. I think that's how Georgia can have offensive success in this game. And look, even on offense the last time they played, there was some mistakes that they made. There was a wide open touchdown dropped over the middle of the field. There was the 4th and 1 stop, remember, that they rushed to the line and gave the ball to Cash Jones and didn't get it. Georgia on the margins didn't play a bad offensive game against Alabama. They just made a handful of mistakes that were the difference in the game, and usually is between these two teams. Gunnar Stockton's been really good ever since that game, except last week against Georgia Tech. But I think that's what it would be for me. Mike Bobo using personnel packages to get what he wants out of Alabama's defense, right? Don't just line up in 12 and just run duo and go right down the pipe. They know what's coming. You need to play this backwards a little bit. I think especially throwing the football with those 2 tight ends, Lucky and Delp, on the field would help Georgia a lot in this game.
Yeah, actually, Walt in the chat right now is saying some NFL mock drafters have been saying Ty Simpson has not been playing well lately. Well, the reason why they might say that is Ty Simpson has had some issues when he's pressured in this game. So I'm looking at, can Georgia find a way to speed up Ty Simpson in this game? Because Ty Simpson is a projected top 5 pick in the NFL draft right now, largely due to how lethal he has been from a clean pocket this year. The redshirt junior has a 90.2 passing grade from a clean pocket. That's 10th among all Power 4 quarterbacks, but he panics more when he's under pressure. He's only 85th in the country with a 47.1 passing grade under pressure, 5 big-time throws under pressure, 10 turnover-worthy plays under pressure. So he has double the amount of turnover-worthy plays under pressure than he does big-time throws. Fortunately for Ty Simpson, though, Alabama has one of the best offensive lines in college football at protecting the quarterback this year. Right now, the Crimson Tide have the 6th best pass blocking grade in the country this year at 82.6. And Georgia has had serious problems at getting after opposing quarterbacks this year. They're only 123rd in America in team pass rush grade. Reminder, there's 136 teams in the country. So Georgia has one of the 15 worst pass rushing grades in college football right now. Head coach Kirby Smart knows that. He's trying to mitigate those issues a little bit by blitzing a lot. Right now, Georgia blitzes at the 37th highest rate in college football at about 42%. 42% on the year. That jumped up to 51% against Alabama in Georgia's Week 5 loss to the Crimson Tigers. Kirby Smart knows you have to speed up Ty Simpson. You cannot leave him in a clean pocket back there. But even though Georgia blitzed him on over half of his passing attempts, Georgia could only pressure him on 9 of his 41 dropbacks in that game. Alabama's offensive line did a tremendous job of handling those blitz packages from Georgia in that game. So the Bulldogs have to create more pressure on Ty Simpson in this SEC title game than they did back in Week 5, or else Alabama, they might beat them again.
I think that's really a great theme you're talking about there, especially with the blitz. And Georgia's going to have to blitz to get home. We've seen at this point they can't rush the passer with just a standard rush and get home. And you look at, I'm just going to throw some passing grades at you against the blitz, okay? And here's some of the games for Ty Simpson against the blitz with his passing grades. Against Florida State, 64.7. Against Missouri, 55.8. Against LSU, 54.2. They blitz a lot. Against Georgia, like you mentioned, 52.5. South Carolina, not a great defense, but they blitzed him a decent amount, 46.7. Oklahoma, here's the big one. Oklahoma blitzed him 33 times. 46.6 passing grade, 3 turnover-worthy plays, including the big pick 6 early in the game that made a huge difference in that game. You can feel when Ty Simpson gets blitzed, especially as he's gotten into the meat of this SEC schedule, that he's sped up. Maybe he's not taking a ton of sacks, and the offensive line is obviously very good. But Alabama also very rarely leaves extra protection in there. They go 5 up, they go scat a lot higher than a lot of other teams, and they don't usually leave their backs and tight ends in to help. They trust Simpson a lot to make the right decisions under pressure, and over the last month and a half, it's been up and down. There are times when it's still really good, and he has a really good understanding of his hots and where the football needs to go, but I'll be curious to see if Kirby Smart sends maybe a different set of blitzes at him. If he watches the Oklahoma game and understands, okay, I got to zone blitz this kid and drop into his hots and see if we can force him into turnovers, right? Or do they go press man like they so often do at Georgia and try to just disrupt the timing and take their chances vertically with somebody like Ryan Williams or Jeremy Bernard beating them downfield? Are they more comfortable letting Ty Simpson try to take shots that way? So you have a really interesting battle, especially with, as we know, as has been said by many, Alabama's run game is inconsistent. This game, once again, much like the Oklahoma game by Simpson, could be won or lost by what he does on 3rd and 6, 3rd and 8 against these blitz packages, because Georgia's going to have to bring them to get pressure. If Georgia's going to send 3 and 4, just a standard rush, they're not going to win that battle. They haven't won that battle all year. But Oklahoma proved especially more than anybody, and even I think LSU proved it at times. You send pressure at Ty Simpson from all different directions, you have a shot at slowing him down.
Definitely. All right. Well, Georgia, Dalton, will they win, was it now their 3rd SEC title in the last 4 years over Alabama and get revenge on the Crimson Tide? Or will Alabama win their first SEC title over since 2023 when they actually beat Georgia back in 2023?
The first thing I thought of, because this is hard. You've got the factor of Georgia's got to get over a mini mental hurdle of beating Alabama, right? You need Gunnar Stockton to play better than he did last week against Georgia Tech, because he only threw for 70 yards. That won't fly in this game. And I want to know where the aggressive version of him went that played against Texas, because that looked like one of the best quarterbacks in the country. And the first thing when I came to the final conclusion here is I know our good friend Mitch Kaiser is going to be really mad at me, because what does he tell us all the time? He goes, sometimes there's just certain rules and certain games you have to pick. And one of his is you just have to pick Alabama to beat Georgia. Well, Mitch, I'm just not going to do it. I'm going to fall for the trap again. I'm taking Georgia. I think we get an ugly-ish defensive game. I think both quarterbacks could have their moments of success and also their moments of failure, especially under pressure. That battle of Ty Simpson versus Kirby Smart and Glenn Schumann is an extremely important one, but I am taking the Bulldogs in Atlanta 23-20, and Crimson Tide fans will be held in suspense into Sunday afternoon about what will happen with their playoff fate.
Yeah, Georgia has lost the last 3 games to Alabama. The last time that Georgia beat Alabama was in the national championship game back in 2022.
Man, oh man.
So Bama's beaten them 3 times in a row now.
The other thing I just thought of, too, with the timing of these games, right? Because this Big 12 game is at noon, correct? It's at noon, and this game's at 3:30 or 4. If they know ahead of time that BYU won, just in case, because BYU's going to jump them if they win. And effectively, that makes Alabama number 11 going into the game.
Yeah, they got to win.
Boy, the level of urgency now is going to be Alabama is rooting so hard for Texas Tech with the way this is shaking out right now. If BYU wins that game before the Alabama-Georgia game starts, the tension on that side of the stadium is going to be off the charts. It's going to be something.
Again, I would kick Notre Dame out in that scenario, but the committee won't do that. They've proven that time and time again. So yeah, that is big for Alabama. They will know the result before their game too, because I did game for BYU Texas Tech at noon. This game's at 4 p.m. too. I am also taking Georgia to win this game and break the streak. I have Georgia winning 27-24 over Alabama to get revenge on the Crimson Tide, win their 3rd SEC title in 4 years. And Alabama, meanwhile, with a 10-3 record, they are forced to pray to the football gods that the playoff committee stays consistent to what they did last year and does not punish the Crimson Tide for playing in the extra game. But if there's one thing the committee is, Dalton, it is inconsistent. So who knows what happens if Alabama loses this game against Georgia. All right, next up that we've got Virginia against Duke in the ACC Championship game in Charlotte, 8 p.m. Eastern Time on ABC. The storyline to know in this game is very, very simple. Can Virginia win this game and avoid a nightmare scenario for the ACC? The ACC has been easily the most wide open conference in college football this year. 6 teams entered last weekend with a chance to make it to the ACC title game. And due to further chaos with SMU losing to Cal, a nightmare scenario ensued for the ACC. That nightmare scenario is that Duke, even with a 7-5 record overall on the year, still qualified for the ACC title game because only 2 of its 5 losses came in conference. If the Blue Devils win on Saturday night over Virginia, even though they're ACC champs and they're a Power 4 champion, they still most likely will not make the college football playoff with only an 8-5 record on the year. Like I said before, the committee most likely would send both the winner of Tulane and North Texas and the winner, James Madison, if they beat Troy in the Sun Belt title game. And since Miami, Florida, is not in the field as an at-large team right now, the ACC could be left out of the playoff altogether. Therefore, everybody in the conference, other than probably Duke fans, are rooting for Virginia to win this game because right now the Cavaliers have a 10-2 record right now. They are pretty much locked into the number 11 seed in the playoff if they beat Duke in this game. These two programs met back in Week 12, and Virginia handed Duke one of their 5 losses on the year by beating them by a 34-17 final score at Duke in that game too.
You know what's funny about this? I was just thinking of, Bessie, we're going on there. I'm going back to our preseason predictions. And if you remember, my ACC prediction for the title game was Clemson over Duke. And if you would have, if you would have told me that we would have of those two things that could happen, Clemson winning it or Duke being in second, which one was by far the more likely outcome? I would have said Clemson winning it.
And if I told you Duke was 7-5, you'd be like, "Oh, damn!"
And Duke went 7-5 and could end up. I could have the runner-up part of this correct by the end of this, and nowhere near the Clemson part because they're in like 10th place or wherever they're at. And then, of course, in that case, it would be Virginia winning the ACC because everybody had that one. That just embodies this entire ACC season, really, and what's going on here. But no, I think the ultimate. See, there's 2 layers of chaos here, Max. Number one is if Duke wins. Number 2, I should say, is if Duke wins
and James Madison
and
loses.
Somehow Troy beat James Madison.
I was just going to ask you that question. What do you do? Is it UNLV or Boise over Duke?
It's either that team
or Duke,
or they just take Duke and just go fine.
They might just take Duke. So Duke, I guess, is still alive for a playoff spot theoretically. They need Troy to beat James Madison.
If Troy beat James Madison, the amount of tension in that ACC game from all over the place would just be insane.
Yeah.
And think about what a team, a Boise or a UNLV, could be thinking at that point. And would they do that? Would they just go, screw it, put the Mountain West team? Because because Duke, the 5 losses here, you got to remember also, one was to Tulane and another was to UConn.
Yeah.
I mean, even Syracuse beat UConn. It's...
By the way, for anyone, it would be either Duke or the Mountain West champion, I would say.
We believe. I don't think a Conference USA,
or
certainly not a MAC team.
No.
Because they're all 7-5, 8-4, and then you're out of it, right? Yeah, American, Sun Belt. Yeah, you would end up with either Duke or Boise, UNLV in all likelihood, and they would all be unranked, so they would just have to pick somebody, right?
Yeah, it wouldn't be Troy either. So yeah, it would be either the Mountain West champion or Duke if that chaos ensued, which is just insane.
If you got after all of that roundabout,
Boise State, actually did.
If you got Boise a second year straight in, unbelievable.
Oh, that'd be crazy.
You got Boise State in for a second year, but they couldn't get a rematch with Penn State. Man,
yeah,
tough.
That's the chaos scenario though. If Duke wins and if the Dukes of James Madison lose, then what do you do after that? That'll be a chaos scenario that I'm sure the committee will have a lot of lost sleep thinking that over the Dalton. But let's get into the actual preview of the game right now. You have the Duke offense, which at times has been outstanding this year, with Darian Mensah at quarterback, one of the best quarterbacks in the country so far this year. But also, it has shot themselves in the foot in plenty of games this year as well. What should we know in that matchup?
They have. The first thing you have to know is if Duke is going to come out here and turn the football over like crazy, like they've done in their 5 losses, then they're going to lose. If they play clean football, they can be a really good offense. So first things first, number one thing to look at for this game at the end of it all is probably going to be turnover margin. And Virginia's played pretty clean football all year. It wasn't a huge problem for Duke in the first matchup. I believe they only turned the ball over once. The bigger thing for me, I'm going to make one simple plea here to Duke's offense. Okay, Darian Mensah's been great. Cooper Barkate, Quayshawn Johnson, the guys all those guys on the outside. Okay, here's a big thing: run the darn ball. Nate Shepard has emerged as one of the best true freshman backs in the country. Right? In their 7 wins, Blue Devils have an 83 rushing grade with 170 yards per game on the ground. In their 5 losses, a 76 rushing grade with 115 yards on the ground. And the only games they ran the ball reasonably well out of those 5 came against Tulane and UConn. All right? They lost those games anyway. In their other 3 losses, Georgia Tech, Illinois, and the third one's blanking me, right? And the Virginia game, sorry, I should say. And the first Virginia game, they ran for under 100 yards. And it felt like when I went back and watched this, I said to myself, okay, Virginia, they came out and they stopped the run. Cool. Duke just chose not to run the football. They went 3 and out on their first 3 drives, and they only ran the ball twice. They only had 16 design carries the whole game in a game that didn't get away from them really till late third, early fourth quarter. They've got to have balance, and they have to choose to have balance. If you look at all of the games where Virginia's given up a solid amount of rushing yards, those are the games where they've either lost or they've won close. Hollywood Smothers in the NC State loss. He had a huge game against them. Florida State, game went obviously to double overtime it was. Florida State ran for a lot of yards on them. North Carolina had a good rushing day against them. When you look at this team, if you can find a way to run the football on Virginia, and even sometimes there's going to be moments in the game you got to bang your head against the wall. But especially without Cam Robinson, their linebacker, the leader on defense. And I know Maddox Marcellus and James Jackson were really good last week against Virginia Tech. But you got to bang the door down a little bit. You've got to get Nate Shepard and Anderson Castle going. Because you can't, if they come out in this game, and last time it wasn't even any creativity. They just said to Darian Mensah at the beginning of the game, hey, we're going to just drop back and sling the football. We think we're better than them. You're not. They disguise coverages. Virginia does as well as any team in the country. They sit back. They don't give up explosive plays in the passing game. They only gave up 76 yards in the passing game to Virginia Tech last week, and most of that was on the last play of the game. You've got to run the football. If you don't come out of this game with 2 things, 1, winning the turnover margin, and 2, a hefty amount, at least 150 rushing yards, Nate Shepard's got to be featured heavily, I think, early. You're not going to win. You won't beat this Virginia team being one-dimensional. Duke has got to run the football to win this game.
Yeah, I agree. I'm looking at the Virginia passing game in this one, and can Chandler Morris once again take advantage of a vulnerable Duke secondary? The best part of Virginia's offense is their run game, right? Jamari Taylor has been a star running back all year for the Cavaliers, but the Cavaliers probably could win this game because of their quarterback in Chandler Morris. He transferred in from North Texas, and he's been more than solid in his first year at at Virginia, with a 24th best PFF grade in the Power 4 with an 81.5 mark. And one of his best games as a passer this year came against Duke when he threw for 316 yards, his second most of the year, 76.5 passing grade, which was his 3rd best of the year, and 161 of his 316 passing yards went to Trell Harris. That was a career high for Trell Harris in that game, who also had a touchdown catch in that game too. That really exposed a major weakness for Duke this year, which has been their secondary. A secondary that actually admittedly has a top 10 unit in the country going into the year. They have not played like that at all. We're not only a 72 coverage grade, 77th in the country. They're missing their star safety in Terry Moore, who has missed all of this year with a torn ACL they suffered last January in their bowl game too. And Duke has had a sub-65 coverage grade in 9 of its 12 games this year. The Blue Devils have to do a better job of slowing down the Cavaliers' passing game, or else they risk Jamari Taylor taking advantage of light boxes in this game too.
They've really struggled to defend the middle of the field, I think. And you look basically aside from Chandler Rivers, the rest of that coverage unit has struggled. And Chandler Morris, when he plays clean football, he's been solid inside and outside of the pocket. I feel like he's been getting better as the season goes on. Obviously missed most of the Wake Forest game, but he's come back and played really well since. I think you make a good point. Virginia, the passing game has been really good. It was good in this game the first time around, and I think Jamari Taylor in the run game obviously is going to play a big factor in this as well. well. Virginia's ability to have balance is big, and Chandler Morris's ability to make plays under pressure he's come through for them all year in those situations. So I do think it is something to watch. And Duke, look, Manny Diaz hasn't been able, because this coverage unit has struggled, he hasn't been able to get as creative as he wants to with the blitz packages like we're used to seeing, right? So who knows if that'll be, maybe he'll take some chances in this game. And they held Virginia down for a solid 2.5, 3 quarters in the first game, but their offense gave them absolutely nothing. But you're right, they've got to be able to cover better, I think, especially over the middle of the field.
So, Dalton, will Virginia win the ACC and clinch their first playoff berth in school history, or will the nightmare scenario ensue for the ACC with Duke, a 7-5 Duke team, winning this conference?
I think Virginia has shown they are the better team here. I think their defense is getting better as the year has gone on. And again, Chandler Morris, when Chandler Morris plays clean football, this team is really hard to beat because they just have a little bit of everything, right? And I do think they're the better team. I also think a big factor, more so than being better, they're the more consistent team. I don't know which Duke team is going to show up week to week, but I do know Virginia is more willing to have balance. I trust their defense more from front to back. I think what I saw last time, too, as Mensa was trying to drop back and just sling the ball downfield, Virginia's secondary is very in sync. Again, they disguise well. They prevent explosive plays well. If Duke doesn't come out with a concerted effort to run the football, I don't think they're going to win this game. I'm taking Virginia. I think it's closer than last time. I have it 27-21.
Okay, I have it actually Virginia as well. I have it 34-24. In this game, I think Virginia will have a very balanced offense in this one, where they're going to take advantage of Duke's secondary. And then, of course, like I said before, with lighter boxes, Jamari Taylor could take advantage of that run defense as well. So Virginia's offense should have a lot of success in this game. I don't think Duke's will as much against a pretty talented Virginia defense. I think the Cavaliers will win this game, win the ACC, and save the ACC from its nightmare scenario. And Virginia will go to the playoff for the first time in school history and all but likely clinches the number 11 seed in that playoff with a win over Duke. All right, that's all we got for the PFF College Football Preview Show this week. I'm just kidding. We, of course, are going to do the next game. Number 1, Ohio State. Number 2, Indiana. It's the biggest game of the year in the Big Ten Championship game in Indianapolis, 8 p.m. Eastern Time on Fox. The biggest game of the year that's going to decide the number 1 overall seed in the college football playoff and potentially also decide who wins the Heisman Trophy as well. Again, top 2 teams in the country, the only 2 12-0 teams in college football right now in Ohio State and Indiana. The winner of this game, of course, wins the Big Ten, but also guarantees themselves the number 1 overall seed in the college football playoff. The loser will still most likely get a first-round bye in the playoff. On an individual note, the winning quarterback in this game will most likely take home the Heisman Trophy as long as they play well enough in this one, because both Fernando Mendoza, who's plus 160 right now on DraftKings Sportsbook, and Julian Sayin, who's plus 170 on DraftKings Sportsbook, they're right now the 2 betting favorites to win the Heisman Trophy right now and basically have the same odds going into this game right now as well. So yes, the winner of this game wins the Big Ten, is the number 1 overall seed in the playoff, but also the winner of this game could also guarantee themselves a Heisman Trophy to be added to their trophy collection.
It doesn't get any better than that, does it? Big Ten title, number 1 seed in the country, last undefeated team remaining. These are the last 2 remaining. The winner will be the last. And the Heisman Trophy possibly on the line. I mean, what more needs to be said than that, really? And I mean, for as much as, yes, they're both undefeated and they're 1-2, I mean, they really have been the 2 best teams in the country so far this year. We'll see how it shakes out eventually in the tournament that we get to later this month. But man, oh man, this is the matchup we've been waiting for what, a month and a half at this point. Once Indiana beat Oregon and Iowa, this is really what we were waiting on. This is going to be just fantastic on both sides. There's so many elements. You could do a whole show just on this game, really, and just all of the implications that are going to happen coming out of it. But it's going to be a great football game.
Dare I say, it could be a national title preview that we get too.
Could be.
Honestly.
Could be.
We'll see how the bracket shakes out, whether or not that's possible. But, I mean, these are right now the 2 best teams in the country. Indiana has the highest PFF grade in the country at 97. Ohio State, 96.3. So the 2 best teams in the country.
The other thing, I'm kind of making an assumption here, but I would think the loser of this game still stays in the top 4.
I would agree.
Here's the only other thing about that is I suppose then, say the loser was number 4. If you get Georgia and Texas Tech to win,
they're on the same bracket. Yeah,
then they'd be in the semis together, right? So it would almost have the feel like last year. Remember Ohio State and Texas?
I almost think that the loser of this game, they'll probably be at least the number 3 seed. Though Georgia will jump them. Georgia will jump them if they win.
They'll leave them. Well, and then you leave them at 3 and you keep them on other sides too. Yeah. That's the other thing.
What happens if Georgia loses, though? Will they just stick them at 2?
You might just leave them there. Yeah. Maybe. Unless you decide if Texas Tech wins convincingly enough, or also, I mean, I would think a school like Texas A&M, somebody like that, is rooting for Georgia to lose to get back in that mix. We'll see. But no, that is a fascinating. There's so many fascinating scenarios here, but the best one is this one here, because it's just 1 and 2. They're both going to be in the top 4. Yeah. They're going to get bye weeks. But between the Big Ten title, the number 1 seed, and the Heisman, it does not get better than that.
So let's talk about the 2 candidates to win the Heisman Trophy right now. Fernando Mendoza, the Indiana quarterback, and Julian Sain, the Ohio State quarterback. Dalton, you have Mendoza and the Indiana offense against an Ohio State defense that has not allowed 17 points in any game this year.
Yeah, so if there's anything I'm still concerned with, and this maybe goes a bit beyond the numbers, because Indiana, I believe, is 3rd in the nation in receiving grade as well. If there's anything I'm still concerned with Indiana's offense, it's just a general lack of elite speed, right? Like, I love Elijah Surratt, right? But he's a possession receiver.
Yeah.
And Omar Cooper's got solid speed, but I wouldn't call him a blazer in the sense of like a Tyreek Hill or somebody like that, right? Or Charlie Becker has been really good in those big body contested situations. I don't think Indiana has a ton of speed on offense. I think that was an issue last year when they lost to Ohio State and to Notre Dame. And what happened in those games? You got more man-to-man coverage. And even this year, in games where they've seen more man coverage, you think about the Oregon game and those one-on-one matchups. You think about the Iowa game and them getting one-on-ones. Now Elijah Surratt made the big play in that game to win them the game, winning on a slant and taking the rest after the catch. But Indiana, if there's one thing they're not blessed with offensively, it's a ton of speed. I think that's a problem against an Ohio State secondary who it's just not afraid of anybody, honestly. I mean, they played Texas, they played everybody, they've dominated everyone, they've shut down everyone on their schedule, and I think you've got to have elite-level athletes to beat this team. And the other thing is that because of that, Fernando Mendoza this year against man coverage has not been nearly as elite as he's been against zone, right? Take him against man coverage in this game. 68.5 passing grade. 57% completion, 7 big-time throws, 4 turnover-worthy plays. Is that awful? No. Is it normal? Yeah. And when you have a quarterback playing in the Heisman race like Mendoza, and the conversation is going to be the same on the other side, you're going to explain, how do you make a guy playing at that level normal? Yeah. And how do you make this offense normal? Well, Ohio State, we know they got an elite run defense. So look, Roman Hemby and Kalen Black are going to play a huge part in this game, and they need to keep Indiana on schedule. But I'm still a little bit worried against, and this is only there's less teams now this year that I would be worried about this with Indiana this year, because I think they're even better this year. But last year this was an issue. If you can play man-to-man against Indiana across the board, and you can still stop the run with your front 6 or front 7, then I think you're in a good spot. Because I don't think Ohio State's afraid of Indiana beating them over the top. It's going to be, and remember last year we were there. When it was Curtis Rourke and mostly this same group of guys, right? Surratt, Cooper, E.J. Williams on the outside. I don't think Ohio State's afraid of that. So I do wonder. They run man coverage. Matt Patricia runs man coverage about an average rate, right around 25% of the time. I wonder if he goes to it more, or at the very least goes to more tightened up single high coverages, even if it's a lot of cover 3 and things of that nature that get the hands on receivers. I have to wonder, like they did with Curtis Rourke last year, and he just couldn't do it. And Notre Dame, it was the same way. Do you dare them to beat you over the top? Because do they really have the burners to beat you over the top? That's what I'm worried about the most. And I'm worried, I'm a bit worried. Look, because we know Davis and Igbinosun's going to get physical. We know Jermaine Matthews has been really good. Maybe we see a bit of Devin Sanchez. And then over the middle of the field, Caleb Downs is the ultimate chess piece, right? So if they do, even when Ohio State's in zone coverage, it's already hard enough to throw over the middle. But does Indiana have the guys to win one-on-one outside? Let's just say, just chuck up a go ball. Let's go. Can they do that against these Ohio State corners more than maybe once or twice? And do they have? Are they going to be able to make up for that lack of speed? Because if that's the case, then I think Mendoza's going to have to be perfect. And he's going to have to be better than what I just showed on that screen right there.
Yeah, and even last year's game, I know it wasn't Mendoza, but Curtis Rourke against Ohio State, a big theme of that game too was how often Ohio State blitzed Curtis Rourke in that game. I wonder if we see a lot of blitz packages in this game against Mendoza with a lot of man coverage attached to those blitzes as well. I'm looking at the other quarterback in this game, in Julian Sayin, and whether or not Indiana can consistently pressure Julian Sayin in this game. Because Julian Sayin, I'll argue right now, he is my Heisman pick. He is Dalton's Heisman pick. I know Eli back there. He is his Heisman pick. He's got a great bet on Julian Sayin earlier on in the year. He has been the best quarterback in America this year. Right now, the redshirt freshman, 93.5 PFF grade, the highest of any quarterback, the highest of any player in college football. The highest graded player in college football right now is Julian Sayin. 78.9% completion rate. That would be the all-time record in college football if it stands. His 84.3% adjusted completion rate is second in PFF college history, only behind Bo Nix's 85.5% mark in 2023. It also helps, of course, he's got the best receiving core in college football right now, headlined by a guy who'll go top 5 next year in Jeremiah Smith in the 2027 NFL draft, and a guy who could be a top 10 pick this year in Carnell Tate as well. Ohio State has a 92.9 receiving grade. It's the best in the country. Julian Sayin has been lethal against zone coverage this year. He easily leads the country with a 94.8 passing grade against zone coverage. Why is that important? Indiana runs zone coverage at the highest rate in college football at 89% this year. This team never plays man coverage. Like 1 every 10 plays, they play man coverage out there. The only chance I think that the Hoosiers have of making Ohio State's elite passing attack, I would argue the best passing attack in college football, the only chance they have of making it look relatively average is by getting after Julian Sayin, because Julian Sayin has a 94.8 grade when kept clean, the best in the country. He's still 9th in the country in PFF grade under pressure, but at 68.5, which is far less flawless than his 94.8 PFF grade. Indiana leads the nation with a 42% pressure rate this year, and they blitz at the 14th highest rate in the country at about 48% this year. But Ohio State's offensive line, been a lot better this year than they were last year. Right now, they're 8th in pressure rate allowed, and they're 9th in pressure rate allowed when there's a blitz as well. So if the Buckeyes can hold up in pass protection against the Hoosiers' blitzes and their star pass rushers like Mikael Kamara at edge defender, Julian Sayin can lead Ohio State to a Big Ten title and also win a Heisman Trophy in the process.
The funny part about the passing game last year, is that Jeremiah Smith's high school teammate D'Angelo Pons really got the better of him. If you remember, and all those zone coverages work, having that zone-heavy approach, and we saw it from Texas too, both times that they played Ohio State, it really allows you to stay on top and limit those big plays from number one receivers like that. And when Will Howard last year in that game really started to get going, it was Emeka Egbuka and it was Carnell Tate picking apart the other side away from Pons. That was really a big factor in this game. So this is the fun part about Jeremiah Smith last year, 3 catches, 34 yards against Indiana. You hold Jeremiah Smith to that, you got to feel really good about yourself. But Ohio State's always got other weapons. Still have Carnell Tate, Max Clare at tight end. The run game I've mentioned is getting better.
Brandon Inniss has been great.
Brandon Inniss has been outstanding lately. Bo Jackson's been getting involved from the backfield in the run game. That's a big part when you're talking about zone coverages, about creating yards after catch opportunities for a backfield guy like Bo Jackson. And then the run game, I think, is still going to be big. I think the same theme I talked about last week, about Ohio State having balance now. They've run for 160-plus yards in 5 straight games now. The battle of Jackson and this run game, especially against the linebackers, right? Aiden Fisher, Isaiah Jones, Elijah Hardy. That battle for the run game, and Indiana for 2 years has had one of the best run defenses in college football as well, is going to be huge. There's so many dimensions. But I think for Ohio State, the key once again is going to be Let's get our quarterback, our young quarterback, in good situations. Then we have a two-way go. Think about the big touchdown, the controversial touchdown to Smith. Was that not on 4th and 2 where you could kind of go either way on that, right? They were ahead of the chains a lot in that game because Bo Jackson could keep them ahead of the chains in the run game. I still expect Ohio State's going to want to run the football, but you're right. You have to pressure the opposing quarterback, and if you're Indiana, the zone coverages have to work, and you have to be able – they disguise a lot on the back end as well. You have to be able to confuse Sayin a little bit. And I know there was a mention possibly from Ryan Day or maybe Brian Hartline last week about how Sayin is already a plus level processor seeing the field. You could feel that last week. Michigan stayed stagnant. Too high, fine, we're going to run the football. He gets those shots to one-on-one coverage down the field, he's going to take them. But there's just so many fascinating elements on both sides of the ball here. But if Sayin continues to play the way he's been playing, it's going to be a tough task because he's just been so darn good on top of, like you've talked about, the most accurate passer in football.
That's why I think pressuring him is so critical because, again, 94.8 passing grade against zone coverage. He has been the best quarterback in America against zone coverage. 94.8 PFF grade when kept clean. He's the best quarterback in the country from a clean pocket, too. He's more, again, still 9th in the country against pressure, but 68.5. That's more average, right? So Indiana has to, and they've had a great pass rush all year, and they blitz a lot too. They have the best pressure rate in the country. That has to hold in this game. They have to pressure Julian Sayin a lot in this game. If they don't, I think Sayin could have a big game and win the Heisman Trophy and win the Big Ten title for Ohio State. Ultimately, Dalton, number 1 Ohio State against number 2 Indiana. Who wins the game? Who gets the number 1 overall seed in the playoff? Who wins the Big Ten title? And who wins a Heisman Trophy for their quarterback?
Boy, I love this Indiana team. They're well-rounded. It looks like they're even better than last year. Well-deserved in that number 2 spot, undefeated. They got everything right in front of them to possibly win a national title. But I still think for now, until further notice, Ohio State's best team in the country. And I do think offensively, both defenses are great. Offensively, I have more concerns for Indiana in this game than I do against Ohio State. For Ohio State, I should say. I think Sayin against this defense they're going to make him work a little bit. I think the disguises and some of the simulated pressures and rotations are going to be fun. If he's an A-plus processor already, as his coaching staff says, then he's going to win the Heisman Trophy. He's going to come out here and just see what's in front of him and win it. And getting through that interception on the second play of the game last week, third play of the game, and just coming back and playing the way he's played the rest of the season, I'm like, oh, okay, so now we found out he's got no pulse. Fine, cool. All right, we got through a big mistake, one of his worst throws of the year.
He had to throw an interception to win the Heisman.
Yeah,
you have to come back from your own mistakes.
You got to come back. It's a come from behind win.
Yeah, being perfect is not enough. You gotta have some controversy.
I don't think he had a come from behind win all year, did he? I don't know if he.
No, it was the first time they trailed. I think.
Was it, or did Rutgers? No, I think Rutgers might have got ahead 3-0 or something.
Oh, but it was a 6-point lead for Michigan was the biggest deficit they've had all year.
Oh, that's what makes it happen.
There you go.
I just don't. And I said this after last week too, a couple of days ago. If Ohio State has the level of balance they've had lately in the run game to go along with Sayin and the receivers, I don't think you're beating them. I just don't think you can beat them if Bo Jackson's going to continue to run like this. And I do think the lack of A-plus speed for Indiana at receiver in particular is a problem. And look, we've seen this passing game struggle a bit against Oregon, certainly against Iowa. And this Ohio State defense is as good as it gets. I'm taking Ohio State. I'm actually taking them pretty convincingly, 27-14.
Wow. So the defense keeps their streak going of not allowing 17 points in the game.
I think so. Maybe he'll prove me wrong and win a Heisman and all that. I've gotten a lot of things wrong this week. Shout out Carolina Panthers. I think Mendoza's going to struggle in this game.
Okay.
And I think Sayin actually wins the Heisman in this matchup pretty decisively.
I'll give Indiana more credit than that. I think it'll be the closest game Ohio State's played all year because they've also beaten every team by at least 7 points this year. Their closest game was when they beat Texas 14-7 in that game. I have Ohio State winning this game as well, 27-24. I think Indiana will be right there, but I think Ohio State's going to pull it out. And I think Ohio State's just too talented on both sides of the ball. The best quarterback in America, best receiving core in America, a great offensive line, an emerging run game, and then a defense that has not allowed 17 points in any game this year, which is an absurd stat when we're 12 games into a college football season. Buckeyes win the Big Ten title. They clinch the number 1 overall seed in the playoff, and they get their quarterback, Julian Sand, a Heisman Trophy as well. I believe the last Heisman for Ohio State was probably Troy Smith, right? Let me look it up real quick.
Trying to think if it was any in the between there. Zeke didn't win it. None of the quarterbacks won it. Fields didn't win Heisman.
No, he didn't. He came close. He was the finals a couple times, but I believe it was Troy Smith. Let me look it up real quick. But yeah, Julian Sand, I think, will win the Heisman Trophy if they win this game. So yeah, this would be a really, really fun game to watch on Saturday night. And we'll see if Julian Sand could do it, man. We'll see if he could do it. Yeah, Troy Smith in 2006 was the last Heisman winner for Ohio State.
Think of all the great players who have come in between then.
Joe Burrow went to Ohio State for a little bit. You know, count that. He won it at LSU.
I think even Burrow himself, hasn't he talked about? He's like, what did he say one time? He was like, I'm not a Buckeye or any of that. Wasn't there something about that? Somebody asked him like that one time, and he was like, nah, dude, I'm an LSU Tiger.
Yeah.
Which, I mean,
so yeah, Troy Smith in 2006. So it'll be the first time in nearly 20 years that Ohio State player wins the Heisman. I think Julian Sand will get it done, lead Ohio State to victory, and they will be the number 1 overall seed in the playoff and look to defend their national title. Appreciate you guys for watching. We have Actually, this isn't the last show this week. On Friday, we're actually going to do a show breaking down National Signing Day, kind of just breaking down the top recruits, where they're going, the top overall classes in college football, who did the best job in recruiting this year, and kind of break it all down for you guys on Friday. And, of course, on Sunday, I don't actually believe at 9 a.m. We're probably going to go live a little later. We haven't decided yet.
I think we're going to go at 10.
10.
We'll piggyback. We'll review all the games, and then we'll piggyback it with a live reaction to the rankings. I believe. Yeah. I think 10 o'clock we're going to do.
Exactly.
Sunday.
We're going to go a little bit later on Sunday morning, not because we want to sleep in. That's part of it.
I do.
But also because, of course, the playoff will be announced at 12 p.m. Eastern Time. We want to be live with you guys when they announce the bracket, the official college football playoff bracket, around noon Eastern Time on Sunday. So we'll be live, I believe, around 10 a.m. Eastern Time on Sunday, breaking down all 9 of these conference title games, and of course giving our final Heisman rankings, our final playoff bracket that we would do, and of course reacting to the actual playoff bracket from the committee. But for producer Tyler, producer Eli back there, for Dalton Wasserman, I'm Max Chadwick. We'll see you guys on Friday breaking down the best recruits and the best recruiting classes in college football.